All right, so let's get a couple more things right there. Hope everybody is able to hear me now. Sorry, it took a couple minutes. Welcome back to the Three-Peat Sports annual live draft show. I am your host, Ian Monhay, as always, here for day two. It's going to be a hell of a time tonight as well. A lot of other moves are going on right now regarding the trade landscape, and we are just going ahead and we're going to have a good time tonight. It was a very good night one where I wouldn't say that there was too many surprises aside from Hansen Young, the big man that got selected by Portland. I didn't even get to him when I was initially doing my draft work, but that was certainly a guy that I was going to watch today before round two because ultimately I thought he was going to go round two, but I was able to watch him, and I think that's where I want to start off with this right now. A lot of folks have talked about him being this baby Jokic, or the Asian Jokic is what they had been calling him. I do think that he has some pretty solid touch around the basket. You kind of have to when you're the size and of the mass of a player like a Hansen Young. But that's a different level of versatility that within that offense or within that team, they just do not have that level of big in terms of the IQ, the feel of the game. It's weird. They have different elements of archetypes of bigs. You have DeAndre Ayton more so as your offensive. I don't want to say engine, but he's your best offensive player in terms of scoring. You have Robert Williams, who's best in terms of moving his feet and sliding. But then you also have the caveat of him being the most injury prone center, perhaps in the league, aside from maybe Mark Williams. You have Duop Reith, who is sort of your advanced stats nerd. You also have Donovan Clingan, who your rookie center from last year displayed a lot of really good stuff as a rim protector, and you should hypothetically be able to get that from Hansen Young as well. I mean, when you get somebody that stands at freaking 7'1", you kind of don't have a choice but to utilize him really well defensively. From a perimeter mobility standpoint, that's almost like his swing skill, right? You don't really have somebody that moves well along the perimeter. You also need to have him be a little bit better of a decision maker on both sides of the ball. He is very prone to losing his man defensively. He is very prone to some really threading the needle passes that just sometimes just did not work when he was playing over in China last year. He does need to kick out faster. He's got to also be able to do that. The process, the speed of the game, gonna have to be fixed up as his NBA career goes on. Now he's working up towards being, a damn near lottery pick, and that is going to have to change. He's going to have to be better with his mobility, with his decision making, in order for him to return first round value, is how I would put it. But I think that is all that I really have for Hansen Young. I think it's a very polarizing draft pick on that front. But now we have round two where the Phoenix Suns made three different trades today to go ahead and move up to 31, and they're going to select a wing, and that's going to be Rasheed Fleming. That's all of the reporting has been locally. That is what has been reported by Shams. I'm going to wait until the selection comes about before I express all of my excitement. But you have a good amount of trades to have led up to that spot. You had pick 52 and pick 59 to work with entering yesterday. Then they trade. What did they trade? I believe they traded up from 52 to 41, utilizing 52 and 59. They traded two future second round picks to go ahead and grab pick 36. Then they trade up from 36 and utilized more second round draft capital to move up to 31, which was a great maneuvering of the draft board by Brian Gregory. And I think that's again, I'm going to save all of my thoughts on the Suns' moves after they go ahead and select Rasheed Fleming. But I'm very ecstatic. I'm very happy that they were able to move up as far up the board as they did. I mean, beginning with 52 and 59 and getting to the first pick is pretty ridiculous. But also just the archetypes of players that they're going after right now, it's a completely different thing compared to everything that we have seen regarding the philosophy of their team building strategies over the last several years. But that's besides the point. I mean, there is, aside from Rasheed, who is my best player on my board, there are a lot of other talents that I am certainly keeping my eyes peeled for. Let me share my screen really quickly. I hope y'all are able to see that. But a lot of these folks were already picked beforehand, but Adou Thiero is more of your he's more of your slashing wing, more than it's a lot better than a Rasheed Fleming, where he's more so on the shooting side. Thiero really does know how to get to the rim, 6'8", about a 7-foot wingspan. He was a very solidly efficient player over there. Uses a combination of speed and strength to blow past defenses, and it really did show in his combine tested numbers as well. He's able to go ahead and blow past defenders at a much better rate. He shows a lot of athleticism on that side of the ball. Same can be said for his defensive traits. He was a player who averaged 1.6 steals per game on defense. Regarding the opposing offense, they were 5 points worse when he was on the courts. It's a lot of physicality. It's a lot of instincts, jumping, passing lanes. That's that's like a normal trait that for scouts, it's almost like a buzzword, jump in the passing lanes. And Thiero does a really good job of doing that in particular. Regarding his slashing, I mean, he does a good job of getting to the rim just with dribbling itself, but he's also a very solid cutter. But you also recognize that, hey, this is a second-round prospect. What's making him fall? It's absolutely his shooting. 25, 26%, low volume, 68% from the free throw line. You can tell that there's just not a lot of confidence there to go ahead and shoot from beyond the arc, create his own shots. A lot of NBA teams are asking of these wings and demanding these wings to space the floor, and Thiero, at least so far, has not shown an ability to do so, and that's going to be a concern of mine moving forward. He is more comfortable, going downhill than spacing the floor. It's going to hold him back. His offensive repertoire, it's very limited aside from getting to the rim. So a lot of defenses are going to be able to scheme up the defense to leave him wide open. You're going to see a lot of times he's going to be put in the dunker spots, but you're also going to see a lot of bigs guarding out on him, perhaps like the Miles Turners of the world, so that he can go ahead and roam around the basket instead of actually defending Thiero all the way out in the corner. And he's just not a very great playmaker. I think that the 1.9 assists it's not uncommon for wings. He's just a player that had the ball in his hands a little bit more when he was at Arkansas, and he showed to me that he does have a loose handle and that he's not really one to go past his comfortability in terms of getting to the rim. He has a lot of tunnel vision. He's a very good defensive player. He possesses a lot of versatility there. He provides a lot of energy. I see, very weirdly, a lot of Nasir Little. And at the high end, I put Jonathan Kuminga, but I do think that Thiero, who is going to need some time to refine a jump shot somewhere. It's not very reliable right now, and there's not a whole lot of signs out there that's showing me that he'll be able to do so, to be able to develop the jump shot. But he's an athletic nightmare, and I think that's going to bode well for teams early in the second round that are just looking for a development guy. He has some fun traits, and I think he'll go really early in the second round here. Who else do I have? Ryan Kalkbrenner. That's a decent one. So a rim roaming big man. He really knows how to finish at the rim. He was very effective in his final season over at Creighton. 19 points, 9 boards, 3 blocks. It's a really good percentage. If I were to take a look, I'm actually going to look this up really quickly. I know that it was a good number. I know that he had a really solid block percentage. Yeah, 7.7 block percentage. Only about 2 fouls per 100 possessions. I think that's really, really impressive for a player of his stature. 7'1", about 270 pounds, which is ridiculous physical traits. I think he's able to alter shots by remaining vertical, meaning that he doesn't utilize his arms all that much to swipe down at all. He stays vertical. He stays with his hands in the air. He really doesn't get into foul trouble, and that's really important when you're somebody who is as slow-footed as he is. He's got to be able to, provide a positive impact defensively and not be forced into one defensive scheme. And I think that his rim protection and his ability to step up, at least to go ahead and hedge on pick and rolls, does a really good job of doing that. Now, he's not explosive. He's really not. Only a 33-inch max vertical when he went to the combine. But he is a good finisher. I mean, look at that. That 80% at the rim is it's really damn good. He's also really good in the pick and roll game where he averaged over a point per possession on that. It's really damn good for somebody of his size. He has good hands. He has good touch. You're not going to expect him to go ahead and be this amazing three-point shooter out of the gates. I don't think that he has bad form at all. I think it's very compact, and I think that he does have potential to stretch the floor. You just prefer for him to go ahead and finish at the rim more. He's not really much of a creator as far as being in the post. Obviously, I put off the dribble, but you're not going to get stuff off of the dribble from somebody that's 7'1" often. And you're certainly not going to get that in the second round. I do think that his passes in the short roll really does help. I do think that he has good feel, but you're not really going ahead and relying on him to be this hub of the offense. More so just a capable passer who can connect the offense very solidly. I do like him quite a bit. I do think that he was worth pick 30, at least to the Clippers, if they were going to go with a big man who, let me look up his name real quickly. No, it's Jan something. Yannick Conan Niederhauser. That was a player that quite literally I wasn't really aware of when I was even looking through the guys that I was quickly writing up on before I hopped on stream here. I think that he's got a really damn good projection. I think he can play about 20 minutes per night, be a very solid rim protector, a good lob threat. I think that he has, good shades of Brook Lopez at his very best if he were to go ahead and really stretch out from beyond the arc. But I think a lot about if you combined his defensive ability during his prime, once he started to play at Milwaukee, and you paired that with his ability to play offensively when he was over at Brooklyn, I think that's sort of, that mold of Brook Lopez. But I think he pairs physically really well with a guy like Donovan Clingan, where they are both at similar heights and are similar frames that are easy traits to utilize in terms of the defensive projections. And ultimately, I did think the Suns were a good fit at one point, but that's clearly not going to be the case no more. With them bringing in too big, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around. But we'll get to my favorite prospect in the second round, and that's Tyrese Proctor. I know that a lot of fans a few weeks ago in game one of the finals, when we saw Andrew Nembhard go ahead and utilize a step back 3-point jump shots over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the fourth quarter, there was a lot of buzz saying, hey, this guy, if you give him his own team, he'll do some damage. I'm not necessarily saying that Proctor can be somebody that you could, have be a cornerstone on your team. But goddamn, Proctor really does remind me a lot of Andrew Nembhard. I think he's a really damn good shooter, and that really shows. 43% on spot ups, 47% on pull up threes. He's a very efficient player. And it's really nice to see this level of improvement in his shooting in particular. I am trying to remember from his early years, and I will look that up, but I remember he was a 5-star or close to a 5-star recruit a long time ago. He is a senior now or a junior now, and he was just disappointing on that end. 32% on 4 attempts in his first season at Duke, 38% from the field. That wasn't effective all that much. And as years have gone on, his efficiency grew. And I would say his handle grew to a larger extent, to where now I feel confident in him being able to do a couple of things off the dribble, operate as a pick and roll ball handler. I think that he does a really solid job of being this secondary initiator when he's called upon. He's also a good mid-range shooter, 53%. I think that does a really good job in terms of complementing his overall scoring palette. You don't want to just be a 3-point shooter if you're going to have the ball in your hands often. You got to do a little bit more inside the arc, and having as lethal of a mid-range jumper as he does, I think that's going to bode really well for him. I think that he's a very engaged defender who rotates well. I think he does a good job in pick and roll situations. Again, a lot of stuff that reminds me of Andrew Nembhard. He does have a pretty light frame, and he is a little bit taller than Nembhard, so it's not a perfect comparison, but he does have a light frame, only at 180 something pounds. When it comes to the defensive side of the ball, he'll be able to bother folks with his length, but I do think that he is very vulnerable to stronger NBA guards, and he's going to have to match up on that. On top of being such a solid shooter everywhere on the court, I think you would just prefer a little bit more either as a playmaker or as a finisher. I think that, as a finisher, he only shot 51% on layups, 55% at the rim, which for a guard and somebody that had the ball in his hands a little bit more this season, that's below average numbers, in my opinion. He's not a high volume creator, which makes sense given that he was operating off the ball in spurts when Cooper Flagg was on the court. But that's certainly something that needs to be developed to a larger extent to make me feel confident in him being that Nembhard type. I do think that he's an extremely valuable plug-and-play defender, a little bit more of a 3-and-D wing/guard combo. I think if he adds a little bit of strength and a little bit more of a playmaking chop, whether that be being able to make high-level reads when splitting pick and rolls, I legitimately think that he could become one of the best role players in the league. That's his ceiling, Tyrese Proctor. And I think that's where I'll stop with the evaluations for now. There is a couple of guys that I wrote detailed profiles on guys 32 through 38. For a couple of other guys, I have done some work, just little bullet points on some of the other prospects that are going to be picked in this second round here. At least I hope that they get picked in the second round. But there should be some really good players that end up getting selected here real soon. And it's going to start with the Phoenix Suns at 31. Okay, the draft is going to start any minute now, and that's going to be real good. So if folks got any questions, whether that's regarding prospects or potential moves, what I think of teams, go ahead and hit me while we're waiting for the draft to start here. I'll be sure to tune in to the comments section. Jeez. It's very weird having to go ahead and this is what I should have done when I was doing the draft show all them years ago, having the stream pulled up on my phone and be sure that my connection was all good. I remember the last 2 years it was all choppy and all 8-bit, and that's nothing that folks really like all that much. But honestly, let's go through a couple of winners so far through round one. A couple of winners, a couple of losers, as we're waiting for the draft to begin. And shortly, the Spurs are easily the biggest winners of last night's draft. If you were able to tune in, it was Dylan Harper at number 2, and then at pick 14, they selected Carter Bryant, the wing from the University of Arizona, who I just believe that's just really great value for those players in particular. Dylan Harper is very much a number 1 prospect in a lot of other draft classes, in my opinion. I believe he has the highest ceiling of any player in this draft class. I also think that there is a lot to be said about the asset management of the San Antonio Spurs by bringing in somebody like Dylan Harper and passing on an Ace Bailey, who don't get me wrong is an enticing prospect, but I think staying safe with somebody that is as elite as Harper is in terms of his physical and athletic traits at the point guard position, you take advantage of that every single time. And then them getting Carter Bryant, another top 10 player on my board, I think that's a much better fit than a Keldon Johnson is on that San Antonio Spurs team, who has since become a little bit more of an inefficient scorer over his time at San Antonio. And there was at one point where I was under the belief that he was going to be a whole lot better. I remember he had a year. If I were to look up Keldon Johnson real quickly, I remember I really liked him coming out of Kentucky all those years ago. I remember throwing my phone when the Suns selected Ty Jerome instead of Keldon Johnson. But yeah, there was a year where he was shooting 47% from the field, 39% from 3, 17 points per game. And then his efficiency just kept on dropping. And that's been disappointing because this is a young guy that I think, I believe that he was a very solid young player who, in the right situation with better scores around, that he would be able to be better. And that just hasn't been the case so far regarding Keldon Johnson, with the amount of other players that have come about with Devin Vassell, Victor Wembanyama. You can even go ahead and talk about Jeremy Sohan going ahead and taking on a larger role than Keldon Johnson. But that's besides the point. When you take a look at a Carter Bryant for San Antonio, again, it's a lot more potential based when talking about his overall ceiling, because he wasn't able to produce all that much at the University of Arizona. But everybody was able to tell that this guy was an NBA player through his build, through his shooting ability, through all the mechanics that he has. He's very technically sound. And who would have thought that? Who is a player that's, what team is going to fall in love with somebody who's technically sound more than a San Antonio Spurs team? So going ahead and selecting Carter Bryant was really a no-brainer. You didn't need any more off-ball or on-ball creators. You just needed guys that were going to be very much plug and play. And Carter Bryant, from day one, is going to be a plug and play wing for San Antonio, and that's really exciting. Now they have just this embarrassment of riches in terms of assets, not just with their draft picks, but with the players that they have. I think that they have some very legitimately high ceiling players on that team now, and they should be able to cash in on somebody at some point, hopefully real soon. Easily the biggest loser. Everybody's been talking about it on ESPN. If you have been looking on social media, New Orleans has been a weird loser. Not in the fact that that Derek Queen is a bad player, Jeremiah Fears is a bad player, or bad prospects. I mean, Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen were my number 11 and 10 prospects, respectively. I did think Common Maluach was the best available center in this draft class, and they should have just selected him at 7. They go ahead and take Jeremiah Fears, who, again, is the Jordan Poole mold, and very hilariously, had like their issues are just as loud as the issues that came with DeJounte Murray. So there's a lot of redundancy with this New Orleans Pelicans guards group. And then them trading an unprotected first round pick next year to go get Derek Queen is very hilarious. Queen is a very highly talented offensive player. I'm not saying that they didn't select good players, good prospects, because they certainly did. But if you were to take a look at next year's draft class, which I guess I should start researching that right now, but you have players, AJ DeBansta. That's the very clear number 1 prospect in next year's draft, and them pouncing on the opportunity to do so, knowing that they're likely going to be bad, to go get Derek Queen, who has a lot of issues within his game, whether that be mobility, whether that be his stamina and his overall build. That's not a good move to move up 10 spots to do so. And if you wanted Derek Queen that badly, I do think that Derek Queen was a better prospect than Jeremiah Fears anyways. You should have just selected Derek Queen if you just, I don't think that Jeremiah Fears is I wouldn't say not worth that 7th overall pick, but given every other move that you've done, I don't think that was necessarily the smartest pick. And I think that they are a team that needs more wing depth, or at least a better defensive personnel within their wings. They have Herb Jones, they have Trey Murphy. And then who else is it from a defensive perspective over there? It's Jose Alvarado. I mean, is Yves Missi all that good of a defender? I'm not entirely sure about that. He has the athleticism to do so. But he's a very schematically dependent defender. You can make a case that it's Carlo Makovic. It's not a good defensive group over there. And it sucks to say that about this New Orleans team that just a few years ago I was pounding the drum that this was going to be a 60-plus win team. Zion, it was going to really start taking over as the face of the NBA, at least for American basketball, and that just has not been the case one bit. So it's been a very disappointing last couple of years in New Orleans. That it just hasn't been in New Orleans' favor all that much. Let's see, what other picks were there? I mean, Nets is a big loser too. Good Lord. It feels like all of them are international prospects, which is very funny. But they took a lot of high floor players. The one player that I think that is a high ceiling player is Igor Demin, who is a fine prospect. I do think that he has some intriguing stuff regarding his playmaking at his size. I just don't think that's worth it at number 8. If you were looking for a tall point guard, there was a better prospect there, and Yakuchonis over from Illinois. I finally got the last name down. It's Yakuchonis. And he went all the way down to number 20. They passed up on him twice, Brooklyn did, to go ahead and select the guard from France, Nolan, who is also just a fine prospect. But again, there's not really much of a high ceiling there. Drake Powell is, he's not better than Rasheed Fleming. He's not better than an Adou Thiero to me. He's a fine prospect, so you don't take him at 22 or whatever they picked him at. they go ahead and select Ben Saraf, he's a decent prospect as well, but again, it's another ball handler. They have like 3 players that can handle the ball, a very low ceiling wing prospect, and then a big with guard skills over in Danny Wolf. It's just a very underwhelming haul compared to a lot of the other teams that really stole value. They had 1/6, I believe, of the first round draft picks, and I don't think that they took enough swings, I don't think that they took the swings necessary when you have as many picks as they did. It's almost a miracle that they ended up trading away 36 to Phoenix, because I don't know how many more of those international prospects that we all could have taken. It's just a very underwhelming haul for 5 first-round picks, and then not moving up for anybody or dealing those picks for somebody that can be an enticing young piece for Brooklyn. It's not good. Brooklyn really mishandled the draft last night. And who knows, maybe they go ahead and they make some more trades to just be a team that takes on some bad contracts. But I don't know. This isn't good enough if you're Brooklyn, for a team that doesn't have the cornerstones at all for this franchise. You have opportunities to do so, especially in the form of trades, and I don't think that they did. I don't think that they grabbed a cornerstone here. As fun as Demon's potential is, I don't think that there's any cornerstone here whatsoever. If we're looking at winners, I mean, Utah, I think, is a winner. Regardless of the stuff that we hear about Ace Bailey and him trying to veer his way to particular destinations, I can't deny that it's a fun fit over in Utah, where he's going to go ahead and get a lot of those number one option touches. I'm sure that this means that they're going to be looking at a lot of different players to ship off, whether that be Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, John Collins. I wouldn't be surprised if they looked at a Markkanen trade just based off of how poorly he played last year compared to his first 2 seasons over at Utah. But Ace Bailey's potential is very, very much, it's much higher than the likes of an Edgecombe, as much as I like Edgecombe, and higher than a Knipple. I think that there's a very legitimate need for a cornerstone over at Utah, and I think Ace Bailey can be a cornerstone for that Jazz squad. And then getting Walter Clayton, trading up to go get Walter Clayton, I think that was a very smart and very good move as well. It certainly makes sense why that they are shopping the likes of a Colin Sexton, because that's the role that he's going to be replacing over there. He's going to be a score first small guard who has a level of playmaking chops, but you prefer for him to go ahead and get his own bucket. And it makes sense with, shopping him. It also makes sense, that selection, considering the down year that Keontae George had last year, where there was a little bit more turnovers. The efficiency went way down than his previous season as a rookie. Just not reaching the levels that I was hoping that he would reach when he was coming out of the draft not too long ago. So the Suns are finally on the clock. Yeah, they're talking about the selection of Rasheed Fleming that's going to be coming up. But Utah went ahead and really did a damn good job of maneuvering the draft board, allowing stuff to come to them, pouncing on the opportunity to go get a scorer on the level that Walter Clayton is. I don't have many concerns about Clayton, regardless of his height and his age. I don't think that plays much of a factor in terms of his ceiling. I think that he's a very damn good player. who is going to warrant a good amount of touches over there. And regardless of it, they're not going to be a good team next year as well. And they still have their own first round pick next year. There's a lot of opportunity here to, still be a bad team and potentially have a wing duo next year of AJ DeBansa and Ace Bailey. There's a lot of athletic potential there. So getting a cornerstone and still having the ability to be flexible with all of their pieces and be flexible with the draft positioning next year, I think that does bode really nicely for the future of that organization. Yeah, we are going to be doing this one solo. Stewart is not going to be coming on for night 2. Hope that he feels better soon. So we're going to be doing this solo, and we're going to be scrambling for some of the back end of this second round, as I envision a lot more international prospects, a lot more guys that I'm going to have to become more aware of. Good. I'm glad everybody's in agreement with this Rasheed Fleming stuff, which I don't know why they're taking their sweet time. We all know that it's going to be Rasheed. We may as well talk about Rasheed now, as the pick is going to come in a couple of minutes here. Share my screen with you real quickly. A lot of Dorian Finney-Smith in his game. Where are you at, Rasheed? My number 18 prospect. I did have ahead of Walter Clayton. I did have some concerns regarding how scalable him in a secondary or tertiary role on his team might look like. But make no mistake about it, Walter Clayton has the higher ceiling than Rasheed Fleming. Fleming is going to be a role player throughout his career. He has a really good blend of size and shooting. 6'9", 7'5" wingspan is really ridiculous. And at 240 pounds, he really doesn't look like he's 240 pounds, not one bit. And he really moves his feet well. That has been his calling card since he arrived. Where did he go to college? St. Joseph's. He's very disruptive. He's very instinctual. About 3 stocks per game. I'm actually going to stop right here just to hear the name and be happy about it. I'm very happy about this. I'm very happy about bringing in Rasheed. But again, almost 3 stocks per game. That's a ridiculous number for somebody that, if I were to look at his minutes per game real quickly, where's Rasheed at? Okay, so he played a lot of minutes last year at 34 minutes. Regardless, getting 3 stocks per game is a really ridiculous number. He plays the passing lanes really well. He crashes a glass really well for his size, 98th percentile in rebounding rate. And he just is a defensive playmaker, which you really appreciate him as a prospect for. You're not going to expect any off the dribble stuff. He only took 7 shots off the dribble, which is really ridiculous. But you're not expecting him to do that, especially over in Phoenix, where you're going to see a lot of, let's be honest, you're going to see a lot of shot chucking from Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks. Obviously, Devin Booker is going to go ahead and take a majority of shots as well. You're not expecting a whole lot more creation from this team, from any of the other players anymore. You're not expecting great passing from Fleming at all. You're expecting somebody to knock down his 3-pointers, which he did really nicely over at St. Joseph's. And you're expecting him to defend his ass off. He needs to limit his fouls a little bit, which is, why the Dorian Finney-Smith comparison to me is very accurate, in that Finney-Smith was averaging about 4 fouls a night when he began his career over in Dallas. But that has since been honed in, and he has become very, very dependable as a defender. And over in Phoenix, they just don't have big athletic wings, and that's where I'm going to give this Suns organization credit. I make no mistake about it, I did not like that Kevin Durant trade, and I still don't at the end of the day. But everything that they have talked about in terms of athleticism, size, and players that are going to do dirty work, and them trying to emphasize that in the players that they've brought in, I would say for the most part has lined up with the actual picks that they have made and the acquisitions that they've made with Fleming as a big athletic wing, Mark Williams and Kamen Maluach, these big athletic centers, bringing in Dylan Brooks to be sort of the person that creates the culture shock here in Phoenix. It's funny to use the word aligned because they have time and time again talked about this organization being aligned with what they're doing. But I do think that they are very much aligned with what they're doing. 32. Okay. All right, so Orlando's actually picking here instead of Boston, about 4 second-round picks. Hopefully Beal gets traded to the Shanghai Sharks soon. Whoever wants him, please take him. I don't think anybody wants him. Let's be completely honest here. It weirdly makes me confident that they'll be able to get out of the second apron, or at the very least do that. I'm not sure if it's going to come in the form of a Bradley Beal trade, but I certainly think that there's avenues to get out of the second apron in the form of a Cody Martin trade, a Royce O'Neal trade, perhaps Grayson Allen. They have made me confident in the direction that they have gone in terms of their roster building philosophy. Still don't like the Jalen Green fit, and I'm never going to like the Jalen Green fit, but I think that everything else that they've done in terms of size and athleticism has matched up with what they have been preaching all offseason, and that I can be very happy about. So if we're looking at Orlando trading up, I imagine another shooter. I imagine them trying to go get a shooter. I would really like a Tyrese Proctor here. Maybe you look at a Kobe Brea to sort of be the shooting specialist. Mark Tatum's walking up right now. Noah Penda. All right. Let me pull up his evaluation real quickly. So he unfortunately is not going to solve any of their shooting issues that ultimately they still have. They have Desmond Bane on the roster now, and that's going to help out in the shooting department greatly. I mean, he shoots, I believe, 41% from three in his career. And Jace Richardson is going to help in that department as well. Noah Penda is not going to do that. He has a lot of limitations there, hovering at around 30%. And he's not a very good free throw shooter either. So where is his impact going to come? It's going to come from his size and playmaking. He really can see over the top of defense as well. I do think that in terms of his scoring, I think it's fascinating in that he is a good cutter. He scores about 1.25 points per possession on cuts, a little over a point in transition. He really knows how to run, fill in the lanes, and sort of make himself available as the offense is transitioning down the court. I believe that he has a great motor, and that shows in his offensive rebounding, as you can see with this 8.6% offensive rebounding rate. And on film, there was a lot of putback attempts as well. He's very relentless on the boards, and that's something that you can appreciate from somebody that is 6'8". You are not getting a whole lot of those second chance efforts from a Jonathan Isaac. I mean, granted, you're not expecting Isaac to go ahead and, crash the glass or do too much anymore. I do think that his defense is going to be his calling card as well. I think that he gets a lot of deflections. He consistently helps off the ball. I think that his awareness on the ball is really, really damn good. I think he's really engaged, and he's more of the do-it-all operator that is able to do a lot of really solid things aside from scoring. At this point, I'm not expecting him to be this type of creator offensively from a scoring perspective. I can expect some decent passes to come from him, and that's going to be the theme of almost every international player. They're going to be able to pass really solidly because that's what they emphasize internationally. And ultimately, aside from his playmaking, his finishing also has got to be better. 29% effective field goal percentage on drives. That's really not that good. And it really shows in his lighter frame. He definitely seems a little bit more timid. I do think that he has a decent floor as a six-man style wing who really emphasizes his cutting and his overall motor on both sides of the court. I see a little bit of Damari Carroll. If he's able to develop the jump shot, he reminds me a lot of a Nick Batum at his highest ceiling. It's very compact. He has a very low release point as well, which is ultimately where the Batum stuff really starts to resonate more with me. But Noah Penda in Orlando, that should be a very solid fit. You have a lot of guys that are solid point guards, perhaps in the form of a Jalen Suggs. Corey Joseph was a hilariously good playmaker for Orlando last year, but they don't really have somebody that that goes ahead and play makes for this team often from a passing perspective. You have a lot of hubs between those two. Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Mo Wagner. Those guys are guilty of that as well. And they're just filling in the hole that is a playmaking point guard in the form of having everybody be able to do a little bit of everything. And that completely makes sense with an Orlando team that's just trying to be a team filled with Swiss Army knives and anything else. So Charlotte is on the clock. Okay, good. So the Suns were going to... That's good stuff by the front office. Supposedly the Celtics were going to take Rasheed Fleming, and to that I say good on them. Good on them for doing so. They are certain. Okay, so it was 46, 57, and 2 future second-round picks to trade up to 32 for Orlando. Solid. Solid deal. A lot of happiness. This is the most together that I've seen the Suns Twitter community in a long time. So very happy to see that. Geez, Orlando still owns that very many firsts? Good Lord. Still have 4 tradable firsts. No, not 4 tradable firsts. 4 first-round picks, 9 second-round picks. Good. Man. All right. All right, Orlando. I'm going to have a lot more time to talk about this Sun stuff soon. I mean, they also have pick 41, and hopefully Tyrese Proctor is there. I'm not going to count on it, but hey, one can hope. The Hornets are up now. They're about to make their selection. Sion James, the forward from Duke. All right. So this was one of the players that I wanted to highlight when I was doing my quick research this morning on multiple other prospects. So Sion James, what I had on him, it was very brief. It's very brief, and I could definitely pull up some other statistics to back this up as well. I'm not going to share my screen for this one. It's just very quick hitting ones. Where are you at, Sion? So he's a very low volume 3-point shooter. He only attempted about one 3-pointer a game. He shot it really well. He shot about 41% from three this year. But the low volume is not anything that I can be totally confident in translating to being a high volume shooter. I do think that he's a very useful asset offensively still. I think that he attacks off of the catch really well. He finishes well at the rim at about 59%, which is solid for somebody that was as uh, as low volume of a player as James was. And he utilizes his body really well. He's a thicker frame at about 6'5", and he's just also a really solid connecting piece on both sides, where offensively he creates passing opportunities off of the catch. He's a very quick decision maker once he catches the ball. He also cuts really well on offense, which is where a lot of that rim percentage. Uh, it's why it is as high as it is at 59%. And defensively, in terms of connection, you talk about early rotations, anticipating passes really nicely in that way. He absorbs contact on both sides of the court, and he also reads ball handlers really well. I think he shadows ball handlers really solidly. And I talk about the 3-point shooting, just how scalable that is without having a lot of evidence that a jump shot is reliable for him and his team. He doesn't have a lot of burst. He doesn't have a lot of self-creation ability, which he wasn't expected to self-create all that much over at Duke. But I would have liked to have seen a couple of more opportunities for him to do so, and he didn't really do that. And I think some of that is because of the lack of a burst. It creates a little bit more pressure on his teammates to do something offensively. It shows up defensively in spurts. He has a high motor, so he's always going to be shadowing people. But when he gets off balance, when he is trying to recover, you can very much tell that it's just not good enough there. I do believe that he is a day one defensive rotational piece, which I find it fascinating for a Hornets team that has a couple of a player. They have a single player like that in Josh Okogie. So them being able to plug him in. No, they have Josh Green as well. There's a couple of players that they could go ahead and plug in defensively, and I think he can be one of those players. He reminds me a little bit of like a Royce O'Neal at his peak, especially if James is able to shoot the 3-pointer better at a high volume, but a little bit of a Stanley Johnson as well in terms of frame, being a 6'5", stockier wing. I think that's around the range of comparable players that I envision for him. But that is interesting for Charlotte. They do have, I imagine something is going to be done regarding Josh Green or Josh Okogie. Both guys are 6'4" and play the guard wing combo, and James is going to be that way as well. But an interesting haul for them so far. A lot of people that will hypothetically have the ball in their hands at the wing slot for Charlotte. Okay, so the timer's gone. Is the pick in for Charlotte yet? Man, where are they still doing this at Barclays? I have no idea. Where are they holding? If anybody knows where day 2 is being held, obviously this isn't the stadium or anything, but it's a much better setup than the setup that they had in the ESPN studio last year for the second round. No trades at all? I'm actually going to look that up in the meantime. Where is the 2025 second round? So Charlotte is up again. I mean, there's a legitimate need for a center. I think about like a Ryan Kalkbrenner. Maxime Raynaud would be fun in that, he's a stretch five. And with the amount of spacing that is over in Charlotte, with the amount of gunners that they have, I think that would be a fun selection. It has to be one of the centers, though, after trading away Mark Williams. Ryan Kalkbrenner. Hell yeah. Let's find it again. Ryan Kalkbrenner was a first-round level talent in my eyes from the center position. He is somebody that I forgot we talked about him at length in this earlier in this show, but just to go through it again, he is a very legitimate finisher at the rim. He showed a little bit of flashes from a shooting perspective. On low volume, shot about 34% on spot up threes, which is decent for somebody who is 270 something pounds and 7'1". He finishes well at the rim at about 80%. He's a very solid rim protector as well. Opponents didn't shoot anything. Creighton ranked in the 96th percentile in opponent paint field goal percentage, and that makes sense with Kalkbrenner's size. It's very hard to get up a shot over him. He's very athletically limited. He can move around a little bit, but he is very vulnerable in switch-heavy lineups. And when it comes to perhaps stretch bigs, you can imagine him getting played off the court a little bit more in terms of, recovering and closing out on those guys. I don't expect him to do well in that department. Again, I compared him to a combination of Brook Lopez's, and he reminds me physically a lot of Donovan Clingan in last year's draft, who was, I believe, a lottery pick, a top half of the lottery selection. So he's just a rock solid player who is able to defend a little bit and protect the rim a little bit. He can certainly finish at the rim. And there is signs of him potentially progressing as a three-point shooter, which is going to bode nicely for a team in Charlotte that has emphasized floor spacing over and over and over again. And I think that he's a good fit for Charles Lee as well. As a defensive piece, I think that he's going to fit in really nicely over there. Not just because that there is a legitimate gap there now by trading away Mark Williams and only having Yusuf Nurkic over there as their only other center. They traded their center rotation to Phoenix. That's funny. But Kalkbrenner should be able to come in and provide a good 20 minutes per game, give or take, depending on what they're able to do at that center position, shore it up a little bit. I will say, as much as I talk about his ability to play in space, I am curious what defensive pieces are going to be rounding out this Hornets roster, because there's not a lot of sizable defense over at Charlotte. If I were to take a look at their roster, at least from the wings, like Brandon Miller's obviously a very solid defensive player. You're not expecting too much from a defensive playmaking perspective on his end. Miles Bridges is absolutely not a defender. He has the athleticism, but he's absolutely not a defender. Okogie 6'4", Josh Green is 6'4". Aside from that, and then Sion James is 6'4", 6'5". Like, Colin Knipple isn't going to be much of a perimeter defender. Neither is Liam McNeely. Maybe Tijon Salon. I believe he was the 6th pick in last year's draft. Wendell Moore isn't going to be that. They absolutely need some better perimeter defensive pieces. I don't know how they're going to shore that up, but I do think that's something that's going to be necessary when you have a coach in Charles Lee who has been he was credited a lot at his time in Milwaukee for some of the defensive adjustments that the team was making, particularly in that NBA Finals run back in 2021. And make no mistake about it, I do think that they're going to try to. I think that they're going to try to find some better defensive pieces to surround LaMelo in particular. Maybe it comes in the form of a guard at some point, like a legitimate point guard at some point, but they need the length to go ahead and hide Kalkbrenner in certain moments, for sure. Philly is up. I'm really excited about VJ Edgecombe over there. I hope that he goes to number 7 if Kyle Lowry leaves, because I think 77 is a very funny number on Edgecombe. But I don't know, something about VJ, and not just in last night's post-draft interview, but in all of his previous interviews, you can very much tell that there's an edge that he carries himself with, and he was able to express why he has that edge yesterday, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to be good. Something about players that have that level of emotion, that have that level of athleticism and motor, that's going to be running on high all of the time. I talked about him being a little bit of a lower ceiling player based off of the tape, and I can certainly stick by that, but I certainly have an open mind to him being a little bit more than an Oladipo, perhaps maybe a little bit more than a Jaylen Brown at some point. I mean, at one point we were debating between him and Cooper Flagg as the number 1 pick some months ago. But really excited for VJ over at Philly. That's a damn good fit for VJ, for Joel Embiid. Really good. So who are they going to add next to him? They called him Janai. I kept calling him Johnny Broome. Janai Broome. Hell yeah. So this is a very fun pick as well. Let me find him for y'all. Number 32 ranked prospect. It was always around this consensus, like 31. Some of them had him at 40, but he was a highly impactful player last year. What was his award? Let me find his award. Yeah, SEC Player of the Year honors. 19 points, 51% shooting, 11 boards, 3 assists, 2 blocks as a 6'10" center. He was a very, very productive player. He was a very damn good rebounder. He was 8th in the country in that, and his rim protection was very surprising, at least to me. 2.4 blocks per game. It's a solid number. No, it's a really good number for somebody of his size. I'm trying to find his wingspan, because he definitely seems to be on the smaller side in terms of being either a center or a power forward. God dang it, where is he at? So about 6'10", 7-foot wingspan. It's definitely negative physical traits. And for somebody who is a little bit more slow-footed and having the lack of athletic traits, it definitely makes me think whether or not it certainly makes me think about his overall ability to. I forgot where I was going with that, but he has a damn good offensive game. That's where I'll restart everything. I think that he's really damn solid in the pick and roll. He's not a very good shooter at this moment in time, only about 28% from 3, and not a very good free throw shooter either. He did a lot of his damage in the paint, where he showed up really nicely over at Auburn. If I were to look at his percentages at the rim, yeah, 63% at the rim, and this is a player who has the negative physical traits to go along with that. That's where I was going. The athleticism and the physical traits make me question whether or not he is able to play the actual center position, or whether he's going to be a power forward. Something is going to have to give there, especially if he's not going to be able to space the floor, which he hasn't shown an ability to have that level of touch at all. Okay, so. Oh, the Lakers traded up. That's fascinating. Okay. But Janai Broome over in Philly, to evaluate that fit, I certainly like it. You certainly weren't going to get much offensive production out of an Andre Drummond anymore. It looks like Yabusele is going to be leaving in free agency. He had a really damn good year over at Philly. And them having this stocky wing or this stocky build of a player, such as a Janai Broome, is going to be able to help replace it in that department. He's a very damn good interior finisher. And who knows, like Yabusele, it took a long time for him to get a jump shot, and he was able to do so in this past season. And Janai Broome, with the talent that he is, with as high of a motor as he does, the rebounding and the inside scoring, there's a lot of potential there. Oh, jeez, the Lakers are already picking. That's a good pick. That's a really good fit. Oh, man. The Lakers traded up for Adou Thiero. Damn it. That's a good pick. They started at 55, too. All right, so this is where I was at. Just to finish it off, he reminds me a little bit, if he were to reach his peak like an Al Horford, particularly Al Horford from like his Atlanta Hawks days. Really damn good defender during his time over at Atlanta. Talking about Al Horford here, but his ability to still defend the rim and be a vertical threat in that area, that's pretty damn good, especially when you take a look at what they tried to do all those years ago by bringing in Al Horford to pair with Joel Embiid, where they expected him to be the Giannis stopper. Now, am I expecting Broome to be the Giannis stopper? Not at all. Not one bit. But I do see a vision where you can have Broome and Embiid playing together, assuming that you have the right development plan in place. But Adou Thiero to the Lakers, they traded up damn near from 56 to 36. Let me see the trade details. 45 in cash. So they sent damn near they traded up 20 spots by sending out cash. That is ridiculous. That's really nice. But all right, where are you at? Adou Thiero. We talked about him at length before this stream started or before the draft started, but high motor, high upside wing. A lot of plus physical and athletic traits, 6'8", 7-foot wingspan. He's way more of a finisher at the rim who utilizes a lot of cuts. He converts a lot of layups, a lot of contact layups. Again, if I were to look at his percentage at the rim, where's Adou Thiero at? He was really 68% at the rim. If we're just talking about just this past year, which is a far larger improvement from when he shot 35% at the rim in his first year, 56% the previous year, 68% this past season. He did show a little bit of a mid-range at around 49% in the mid-range, which is really nice. That is really nice. But you're expecting him to do a lot more of his damage as a slasher, as somebody that cuts. He does have some hurdles in terms of his shooting everywhere, from the three-point line, from the free throw line. He's got to be a little bit more of a floor spacer if he's going to be this more slender wing/guard combo. He has a lot of defensive versatility. He jumps a lot of passing lanes. I think that he's got good quickness and strength to allow for him to be positionally versatile. Again, a lot of Nasir Little when he was coming out of college. Where did he go again? I forgot where Nasir Little went. Did he really go? I think he went to Duke, if I were to look it up. Come on, show me something. North Carolina. Damn it. Yeah, I remember because he was supposed to be the Zion stopper. But at his peak, he definitely does remind me of a Jonathan Kuminga in terms of the athletic traits, in terms of their ability to slash, and the fact that they haven't really developed that jumper yet. It's just a lot of raw athleticism that's going to be utilized defensively, but Thiero has the energy otherwise to go ahead and make a mark in this league from a defensive perspective. If he can develop that perimeter shooting, it's going to be nice. But it's fun athleticism to tap into. As far as the fit in LA, I mean, let me take a look at their roster real quickly, because at first glance, I do want to say that it's a damn solid fit. At least somebody coming off of the bench that has a little bit more diverse in the skill sets of their guard/wings. Gosh dang it, that's not who I meant to press. I mean, I can imagine this getting in the way of potentially Bronny James getting into the rotation, and I don't think that he should anytime soon. Let me make that clear. But I do think that they're going to give him a little bit more minutes and a little bit more time to shine in the rotation. I do buy that. But let's see. Dalton Connect is pretty much your sniper. Is Shake Milton going to stay? Probably not. Jared Vanderbilt can't shoot, but a damn good defender. Rui's just a stocky offensive option. Maxi Kleba is just a stretch four. Dorian Finney-Smith is the interesting one, because there's a lot of talk about him potentially declining his player option and entering free agency, which is fascinating. He's making $15 million, but I do like this fit here overall. There's a lot of I see some players that are going to be ahead of him in the rotation, but that's an athlete that you are very much willing to go ahead and develop for the long term, and potentially as a lob threat, that'll be nice. But you also take a look at what Luka has next to him during his best seasons, particularly at Dallas, and that's a whole lot of floor spacing. And they gave up a good amount of cash to move up 20 spots and go grab Thiero, which is going to help defensively speaking. Offensively speaking, that shot has really have to start falling, or he's got to be schemed up with some very good off-ball movement. That's sort of the fit there. Hell of a player, hell of an athlete is how I would put it. He's a hell of an athlete that's fun to utilize, and the Lakers going ahead and trading up 20 spots to at the very least get themselves a young prospect in here. I like it. I really do like it. Did they end up making a pick while... Yeah, they did. They did make a pick. Did they really make a pick while they were on commercial? Oh my God, they did. All right, so Jesus Christ. Chaz Lanier is a Detroit Piston, and it looks like the Pacers are going to be selecting real soon here. Chaz Lanier, what did I have him as? Oh my God, they're so quick with these picks. Threw me off completely. Who are the Pacers getting? Cam Jones to the Pacers. I like that. But I'm going to quickly go over Chaz Lanier real quickly. I don't mean to breeze by him too quickly, because I think Lanier is a solid prospect. I think you're going to get a lot of solid shooting out of him, 40% from beyond the arc. He broke Tennessee's single-season three-point record last year with 123 makes. It's a damn good number. That's a lot of shot attempts to be putting up. I mean, he has really damn good shooting mechanics, and it shows in the statistics. 95th percentile in terms of unguarded attempts, about 1.3 points per possession in spot ups. I think that his form is really compact, even off of the dribble. There's a lot of consistency that you're able to see within his footwork, his release. He does a lot of solid stuff in other areas of the game as well, in terms of isolation. As you can see, 94th percentile, 82nd percentile in transition, 84th in the half court. And for those that don't understand percentiles, the higher the percentile, the better you are in a specific category. Defensively, he's very flawed. Physically, he's very flawed. He's a lighter guard and a smaller guard as well at the two guard spot. So him going ahead and being a defensive playmaker, it's really non-existent right now. And he's not a very good finisher at the rim either. 50% of his shots there at the rim. And him going to the Pistons is funny. It reminds me a ton of Malik Beasley at his peak. And given that we have no idea what the Malik Beasley contract is going to look like in free agency, he could get 15, 20 million after having as good of a season as he did last year. They don't really have a lot of guards on the roster that can legitimately light it up from beyond the arc, and Chaz Lanier slots in as a really good shooter for Detroit if he were to get the playing time necessary. But Cam Jones goes to the Pacers. The Pacers trading up is a fun one. So a lot smaller of a profile. He's a polished senior who has made improvements year after year after year. Does a really solid job as a pick and roll ball handler. Was a lot more of the lead initiator for Marquette this past season, and you're able to see that in the scoring that he was able to provide. About 1.37 points per possession as a pick and roll ball handler. He was great off of the ball, and I thought that he showed a lot of poise, particularly in clutch time moments. His off-ball ability really does stem from previous seasons, as we can see. Where was I reading that at? He was a spot-up shooter most of his career, and this season he was 40% off of the catch, which is really nice. It is really nice. And defensively, his on-ball defense ranks in the 90th percentile, which is really damn solid. He showed a lot of good ability to shadow defenders and utilize his length to his advantage. Now, his three-point shot is definitely streaky. He dipped from 40% last year to 31%, but that was really more so a result of him being a higher volume shooter. And 26% on pull-up jumpers is just that's not good enough. And without the elite burst, I don't think that there's not much of a great ceiling in terms of his defensive switchability, in terms of his ability to split pick and rolls and create advantages in that way. I do think that he's very polished. He is a senior at 22 years old, and I think that he has very legitimate IQ. Like, I think he has a lot of legitimate second-round upside. I think of him more so in the Monte Morris role. He was a very difficult player to comp because there really isn't a lot of 6'5" point guards that shows a level of, decent playmaking chops with decent shooting. It's very hard to find that. But I think of him as a potential, 20-minute per game rotation guard. I think he has good feel as a playmaker. I think he has good feel defensively. And I think this past season, him taking a jump in his scoring ability was great in terms of his overall trajectory and moldability into a different role. He played a ton of different roles, which makes me think that he can be a really solid plug-and-play guard over at Indiana, who, again, lost Tyrese Halliburton for last season or for next season, and they need some guard depth pretty desperately. Oh, my goodness. Just doesn't stop. Toronto's up. Elijah Martin. All right. Elijah Martin was one of my quick hitters as well. Make sure that all right, we're good there. He was one of my quick hitters as well. He's a smaller guard, is how I would put it. Elijah Martin, let me find his height. I didn't have it listed. Where are you at, Elijah? He's a very defensive-minded guard. That is what I really like about him. He's very feisty on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, 6'1", and I think it plays a role in that he has a 6'8" wingspan that very much overwhelms some of the guards that he has to face up against. He plays with a relentlessness that's just very difficult to ignore in terms of fighting over screens. He legitimately picks up 94 feet full court, and he has a knack for some legitimate swipe downs, being very crafty in the way that he is a defensive playmaker. He does a good job of getting to the rim as well. He shot about 66% at the rim, served as a pretty decent shooter, and that's really to the extent of it. He was 36% off of the catch, which you prefer to be higher, especially for a player of his size, but it's very solid off of the catch regardless. You shouldn't expect him to be much of a creator or much of a scorer at all. He can be rushed into some difficult shots that he isn't comfortable taking. He's not a difficult shots type of person. He likes playing at his own pace and shooting uh, when he is open. He's also just not, and it makes sense because he does pass up the looks where he's a little bit more open and he has the space, but he ends up driving anyways. And that's where another issue comes in that he's not really much of this advanced playmaker either beyond just being a kick out guy. From that standpoint, if you're 6'1", he's going to be picked on defensively, unfortunately. That's just what's going to come with a player of his stature. If you're going to be a negative in that aspect and being picked on, if you're not going to play make at 6'1", and if you're not able to create like a shooting guard would, like what is the role that he's going to have in the half court? Are we going to see a lot of back cuts? Are we going to see a lot of off-ball schemed up opportunities, or is he going to have to just remain a catch and shoot guy? Which if he is, he's got to get a lot of reps in there because 36% is fine, but it should certainly be a little bit better. And defensively, he also can ball watch a lot. So there's a level of undisciplined tendencies that he has off of the ball. He should slot in pretty solidly as around a 15-minute per game guard with a good amount of athleticism. He is very athletic. That should be utilized as a finisher and an on-ball defender. He should be able to knock down the wide open shot. He has shown that he can, but again, emphasis on should. He's a very streaky shooter, and that's nothing that makes me all that excited all that much. He shouldn't be asked to do much offensively. Just expect him to be a defensive playmaker, sort of like in the role of a Javon Carter, if you remember him from Phoenix. I believe he's in Chicago right now on a $6 million a year contract. Good for him. At the high end, if he's able to develop a shot, you can think of him in the DeAnthony Melton mold. But again, it's very hard to see a lot of these guards, these smaller guards, going ahead and making big impacts. It's difficult to find. But Elijah Martin and his fit over in Toronto, it certainly makes sense. They selected a small guard last year in Jamal Shed, and now their guard room is pretty damn solid. I really do think it's solid. He provides a different level of defensive versatility at the guard spot that doesn't really go through with some of the other players that are on the roster, whether that be Shed, who is more of the playmaker, traditional point guard mold, or like Emmanuel Quickly, who is way more of the scorer type of point guard. I do think that he provides a different look if you're looking at him as a point guard in particular, and I think that's fascinating. I think it's fascinating, especially defensively when you're looking at the length of this team with Barnes and Ingram, when you're looking at a player like Jakob Poeltl, who is a very legitimate rim protector. They drafted Colin Murray-Boyles yesterday, who's going to pose as an awesome defensive player. It certainly fits the MO in terms of the length that they have looked for pretty much throughout the entire time of Masai Ujiri's run as president of the Raptors. So this pick is going to be going to New Orleans. This was acquired in the CJ McCollum trade. Okay, Book is going to sign an extension soon. I mean, I could have expected that. I am really hoping, I'm really keeping my fingers crossed on Tyrese Proctor. I really need it to be Proctor to the Suns at 41. If that happens, they got to be the winners of the draft at that point. So who will New Orleans pick? Come on. Yes! I really want Tyrese Proctor. He is still there. I really want him. Micah Peavey. So this was a player that I didn't end up having on my radar. I know that he was somebody that was on some draft boards in the late 40s that I saw. But if I were to look him up real quickly, I could do some on the spot stuff. Now that I'm aware of him, I'll be sure to go ahead and watch him a little bit more. Again, it was very hard this draft cycle to get to everybody that I wanted to. But where are you at? Micah Peavey. Okay, so he does have some pretty solid size at the wing, around 6'6". He should. It's a disappointment that it's only a 6'7" wingspan. Again, we're going to talk about wingspan a lot regarding wings. When you are that type of athlete that they are, you sort of need the plus physical traits as well. And having an average wingspan isn't really going to cut it, especially if you're going to be this solid defender. I think that he is a solid athlete. He is a strong athlete, not really quick, but he's very good laterally speaking. Now, that is where he's going to make his mark at first, though. He is that's like his best chance of being a legitimate defensive piece. Again, this is everything that I'm just reading right now. Extremely switchable, excellent anticipation, a transition piece mainly. Offensively speaking, has a 27% jump shot. Oof, I don't like that all that much. Flaws in his mechanics. Doesn't have an ability to separate or finish at the rim. Defenses aren't going to collapse onto him. It's not going to force rotations. I like this. So by the looks of it, this is just a defensive piece. There's not really much to buy into in terms of his offensive game. And with his limited athleticism, it does seem like that you are going to have to scheme some stuff up offensively speaking, because you're not going to get somebody that gets to the rim well. You're not going to get somebody that is going to burst off the line at all. But if we're just looking at it just in that aggregate from a defensive perspective, again, we talked about New Orleans going ahead and not having many defensive pieces on the wing anymore. A lot of it is depleted. And with the players that they had already brought in this draft, and Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, they are certainly not defenders. So them going ahead and bringing in a defensive-minded wing, it certainly makes sense for the roster from a roster building perspective. It makes sense with the lack of solid wings aside from Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Do we even consider Zion a wing? I think of him as like a big than a wing. And maybe I'm forgetting some other folks, but I'm really not all that high on I'm really not all that high on their wing depth, and I think that he can certainly provide that in the form of his defense, which is a very legitimate need for this New Orleans team. All right, I need this desperately to be Tyrese Proctor. I would not be surprised if they picked up like a Maxime Raynaud though. They just want to supercharge this team with a whole lot of size. They already did so last night with Mark Williams and with Common Malowich. And supposedly they're getting calls on Nick Richards, so I wouldn't be surprised if they try to bring in another young big either. But Tyrese Proctor, need it to be him. Because I mean, there's a lot of roster building. There's a lot of fallout in the roster building and a lot of fallout in the roles for certain other pieces if it is him. Be sure that there's no trades at all. Yeah, they're just going through a VJ Edgecombe interview on ESPN. Figured that day two would be be the broadcast where they have every single interview come in and really take their time with all of this. Oh, dude, come on. No, the pick is in, Malika. Come on. Kobe Brea. All right. Again, it's not Proctor. It's not Proctor. Proctor is my guy. Whoever is going to get him is a damn steal. But Kobe Brea, absolutely not a bad selection whatsoever. It certainly makes sense given that this is going to be a team that's likely going to be moving off of a Grayson Allen real soon here. You're going to be losing the shooting. Kobe Brea is absolutely the best pure shooter in this draft class. 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" wingspan. You know, not really good physical traits, but 6'7" sniper is really nice. Just take a look at all of this. 48% shooting in transition, 46 on handoffs, 44 off of screens, and he does it almost always off of the ball, relocating, navigating screens, and coming off of curls and flares. He has some very legitimate footwork in terms of being a shooter, very compact form. It's a benefit to have somebody that is as much of a sniper as he is, on top of the fact that he's efficient in most other areas. About 47% from the field, 91% from the free throw line is exceptional for somebody of his size. It seems like it only stems from shooting, his offensive impact. But his spacing, his shooting gravity is really damn good. It demands attention from opposing defenses. It opens up driving lanes for creators, and he can certainly pass adequately. I'm not going to say basic reads. I'm not going to say advanced reads. He's able to do stuff accurately and adequately. But he's able to move off the ball really nicely, and he's not a very high turnover player either. You do worry a ton defensively. You certainly worry athletically. He's a below the rim athlete, doesn't really have the burst or the quickness necessary to blow by athletes or anything of that nature. It's going to hurt his versatility. He lacks quick closeouts. He gives up a lot of space defensively, is often, unaware defensively. That ultimately makes him more of a specialist more than this elite role player at all. NBA teams are going to covet shooting. Very clearly, Phoenix is going to covet shooting. He offers that high floor of being somebody that you can play for about 15, 20 minutes, put up maybe 5-6 threes a night, and really do some really good stuff in the pick and pop game, off of the ball. If he adds anything else to his game, he's going to get a whole lot more consistent minutes on a nightly basis. Reminds me at the top tier, at the top end of like a Luke Kennard. and the Kings are going to go ahead and make this pick soon. But in Phoenix, it does seem like Grayson Allen's time is coming to an end soon. It's going to certainly make sense by bringing in a younger player on a much more controllable contract, which, now money is really becoming an issue for a lot of these teams. So bringing in a younger player that is similar to Grayson right now, it makes a whole lot of sense. Maxime Raynaud to Sacramento. That's fun. That's really freaking fun. And I'm sure that I'll talk about Phoenix a little later. Maxime Raynaud is such a fun fit over at Sacramento. Just a shooter. 7'1" center that can legitimately shoot. Yes, 35% from three. It's not that great. He did it on high volume on about 5-6 attempts a night over, where did he go to college? Stanford? Yeah, he went to Stanford. But he, in terms of efficiency, everywhere else, like, it's certainly down. Like 47% from the field as a center is not all that great. You expect that to be a little bit higher than 50%, which is funny. But he broke out this season. You're able to see him protect the rim a little bit better at around 1.4 blocks. I thought that he did a decent job with passing instincts and passing out of the post whenever he was there. And he does a good job keeping the ball moving. I wouldn't say he's necessarily a hub of the offense or anything of that nature, but he's certainly somebody that is a connecting piece that allows for a lot more movement and allows for faster pace within the offense. I think he's very durable. I think he was very decently efficient in terms of his passing, in terms of his three-point shooting. I think that's where the efficiency in my mind comes from. He's not very big as a center in terms of his frame. It's not full on, 260 pounds worth of muscle. And obviously for a player of his size, he's going to lack the burst. He's going to lack the explosiveness, both vertically and conditionally, being able to run around the court. His 1.4 blocks is decent, but his lateral mobility does really suck. You would just prefer for him to not always be hedging, which he has shown to be fine at in terms of pick and roll defense, but you certainly don't want him doing that a whole lot more. You want him sort of backed up a little bit more to the paint than anything else. He has a nice balance of size, shooting, and touch as a post scorer, and it puts him in a solid spot to receive minutes right away. As he sort of molds himself into his body, and as he becomes a little bit more efficient from beyond the arc, which, I think that he can. He has the touch. He has shown consistency in getting those shots up. I'm certainly sure that he can do so. He's a good connecting piece offensively that can be utilized pretty nicely. I think that he could be very versatile from an offensive standpoint. And on top of being a good finisher, like, he'll be helpful right away. Regarding his fit over in Sacramento, it's different. You have a guy in Domantas Sabonis who is not much of a floor spacer. He'll shoot it occasionally, but you want him to be scoring at the rim. Jonas Valanciunas, it's the same thing. Raynaud, you want him spacing the floor. And as somebody that is able to move the ball around very solidly and very effectively, whenever I take a look at that, and I imagine him next to a Sabonis who is able to pass the ball very solidly, as he is the definition of a playmaking hub. And the fact of the matter is that Raynaud can go ahead and keep the ball moving and keep relocating. I think that he lacks the mobility from an athletic standpoint, but he is able to move around the court and make himself available for certain opportunities offensively. And I think next to a Sabonis, that's a really fun thing to evaluate. They still absolutely need a point guard over there in Sacramento. They are point guard deprived after trading away Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox and, making a bust pick in Davion Mitchell all those years ago. But that's the caveat. I think that he's going to work better with a point guard instead of a lot of these hubs. But I think having hubs like Sabonis is going to play a benefit to Raynaud and his ability to space the floor. Washington is up at the next pick. Certainly taking their time. If we were looking at Washington, who have they selected? It was Trey Johnson, Will Riley. Maybe you get another big. Wizards get Jamir Watkins. Did I have him in my notes? I remember I had him there. Damn it, I didn't. All right, let's see what a lot of other folks are talking up. I know this was a guy that I planned on going ahead and watching at some point, but if we're looking at Jamir, what are other folks saying about him? Jamir, where are you at? Jeez, he might be just really low on this board. Where are you at, Jamir? Okay, I can't find him there. Let's find him over here. Jamir. So everything that I'm seeing this year, 18 points per game, 6 boards, 2 assists. I did not say Siri. 2 assists, 3 turnovers. Okay, so off rip, I see that. I'm like, I don't like that level of lack of playmaking. 43, 32, 75 shooting splits. It's not great. It's not great if we're looking at a wing. Oh, he's a smaller one too. 6'5", 215. 6'11" wingspan is pretty damn large for somebody that's 6'5". So by everything that I'm looking at, functional athletes will push the pace and go out on the break. Has a solid handle, uses a lot of crossovers, was best playing on ball screens, slashing. Most impressive defensively, very tough at the point of attack. Uses his lateral quickness as well. Doesn't have much vertical explosiveness all that much. Doesn't really do anything efficiently enough as a scorer, and that makes sense. 34% off the catch is not that great either. Jeez, that's not that good at all. For somebody that was as high volume as he is, that's not really good. Looks like a wing, but there are kinds of, somebody that this man could be skeptical of, sure. Not good enough as a shooter, not good enough to have the ball in his hands. So what exactly is his offensive role? That certainly makes a whole lot of sense. Certainly makes a whole lot of sense. What's going on, Stuart? Welcome to the chat, Stu. Any surprises? The stream's going good. Thank you for asking, Stu. It's been a hell of a night too. Very happy myself as a Suns fan that I'm sure that I'm gonna talk about near the end of the stream. But any surprises in this second round? Let me look at the picks again. I wouldn't say that there's too many surprise. I mean, the only slight reach for me would be Sion James. He's a guard wing combo from Duke who went to Charlotte with the 33rd pick. Just a little bit early in terms of, hey, I really like Tyrese Proctor a lot. That's been my guy, and I talked about him at length at the beginning of this stream. But that is certainly a player that I am really hoping gets a nice selection here real soon, because I really think that he could be a Derek White in his prime. But that's really the only surprising selection. I think everything else has been expected. But regarding that last pick with Jamir Watkins going to Washington, he certainly fits the mold of like what a Keyshawn George was in last year's draft in terms of the physicality, the physical traits. Oh, wow. I wasn't aware of this guy at all. Brooks Barnheiser. But to finish up on Jamir Watkins, this is a guy who's a very, very strong athlete, and I think is going to have defense be his calling card. a very good athlete that just has really no idea what his offensive role is going to be. And I think that's totally fine when you're looking at a Washington team that is going to really emphasize the development of Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, and certainly Trey Johnson as scorers over at Washington. So getting glue guys that are able to do a little bit and show off a little bit, athletically speaking, makes sense to take a gamble on him, given that Keyshawn George wasn't really all that much for Washington last season at all as a rookie. But Brooks, I got to find him. Brooks Barnheiser. Wow. That's a hell of a name. This year, 17 points per game, 9 boards, 4 assists. What's his size looking at? 6'4", about 6'5", 230 pounds. So 6'11" wingspan as well. Man, a lot. These are the physical traits that I'm talking about in terms of having positive physical traits. 6'4" with a 6'11" wingspan. It's freakish, and that's abnormal. But you're looking at players that maybe have 3-4 inch longer arms than their height is. But let's see. He has a great feel for the game. Reacts well to what's happening around him defensively and offensively. A really damn good defender from a team defensive perspective. Always is in the lanes, helping, available on a string. Very solid in terms of bumping cutters and getting them off platform. He's a very good scramble defender. It looks like they're saying anticipation, recognition, being able to keep the shell intact. So he just seems like a very special defender. Offensively, it definitely seems like there's an issue there. Good passer, 4.2 assists to 2.8 turnovers. That's a decent ratio for somebody that did have the ball in his hands often. I mean, 17 points per game is nothing to scoff at. So you got to be able to have a level of efficiency there. And he does. And that's really nice. He can make some solid passes by the look of the stuff that I'm reading. And by the looks of it, he's not much of a shooter at all. Has the promise of being a 78% free throw shooter, which again, the free throw shooting in college is sort of a precursor to what he could potentially be shooting at the NBA level. So if it's high, should be solid and should be able to expand his range with good touch. 34% of his threes during his junior season, which is decent. He only shot 27% from three. Yikes. Career 31% three-point shooter. That's not all that great either. Athleticism worries pop up on defense. Okay. So this is I was going to say hilariously like a Lou Dort and an Alex Caruso. I don't think it's to that extent. If I were to just give a player comp right there, but Brooks Barnheiser certainly fits the mold of. I think that they were trying to find that regarding the selection that they made for Dylan Jones last year, who was a player that I really did not like in last year's draft cycle. He certainly seems like a bigger wing regarding Barnheiser. And I think that he can provide the passing chops that Jones does have. But I think Barnheiser, he does seem like he has a lot more potential from a defensive perspective. Oh, yeah, 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. If I were just looking at Stewart's comment, absolutely. I'm going to talk about them near the end. Very happy, and I think we should be both optimistic about these selections and these fits for these certain players. All right, let me turn on my light really quickly. Okay, so Minnesota's up on the clock. This is the pick that they received from the Lakers when they traded up. Who does Minnesota get? Rocco Zikarsky. They are just loading up on centers. Now, I'm not okay. I'm not sure. It's so funny seeing them go after this very many centers. Again, this was somebody that I had on my radar, but um it was only because the man is 7'4". 7'4". Oh, come on. You don't have his wingspan. I'm gonna go find his friggin' wingspan. He's a monster athlete, monster build at that center position. And it's just very funny to think when you look at this Minnesota team, they were really the first team to employ the double big lineup with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. They were going to do so anyways before they traded for Rudy Gobert when they drafted Walker Kessler, before they included him in the Gobert trade. Ooh, excuse me. Gosh dang it. They don't have his wingspan. Okay, so it's a normal wingspan, about 7'4", 7'5" wingspan. But he is the biggest player in this draft class, and that tells me all that I really need to know about Zikarsky in terms of, hey, he's not going to be able to move around all that well, and he doesn't. At least in the clips that I was able to see, I saw a little highlight reel of his, and I thought, oh yeah, he can't really move all that much. You are absolutely going to play him in a drop. You are not going to have him hedge on picks all that much unless you just have all of the elite wing defenders that are able to anticipate passes really early and be early in rotations, because otherwise you're going to have a tough time scheming up a defense around him, which is why I think that he's way more of a backup big throughout his career than ever reaching that starter potential. And weirdly enough, he lacks the play strength. He's not somebody that is a very good post scorer all that much. He very much struggles to get position down low from what I was able to see. And ultimately, he's got to set better screens. He's one that slips them a lot more than, getting into it. And that is an issue. But you have the size, you have the verticality of him being over here in Minnesota. And that's after they selected Johan Berenjay. And I'm sitting here really trying to evaluate how this is going to work in terms of the long-term future of Julius Randle. Like, I know that's a bit of a stretch, but this is a team that has been trying to operate under a double big system for a long time. What does this mean for Naz Reid? Do they continue to look at a trade for Rudy Gobert? It's fascinating, bringing in a lot of bigs. They are very lanky. They're very lanky. They're very long. And ultimately, that's going to still play a benefit to this Minnesota defense that has really emphasized length over the last several seasons, dating back to when they selected McDaniels all those years ago. Okay, Amari Williams to Orlando. Let me be sure that there wasn't any trade at all. Sorry, just checking this out real quickly. Okay, so this is the pick that Boston received in the trade down. Amari Williams. This was also a player that I did a quick little briefing on. Amari Williams, he's very much an offensive hub. He is somebody that utilizes his own screens really well. He's a very good screen setter. It allows a lot of space for not just his ball handler to operate in, but it allows him to receive it on the catch and be able to make some really damn good decisions with the ball. He's a very solid vertical defender. He has very decent length at the rim, but namely, I think that he's just a really big player as well at around 262 pounds, 6'10". I think that's the real fascinating thing about his build in particular. He operates a lot as a scorer in the post, And that was very evident in his ability to finish at the rim, which was about 69%. Very solid. But he really doesn't have much of an offensive game aside from his post scoring and his passing. I didn't see too much as a lob threat. And he obviously was not going to go ahead and space the floor either. 36% in the mid range is not good for any player. And 25% from downtown, granted on low volume, but you're not going to see him potentially space the floor at all. When you're looking at him defensively, he has heavy feet. He really does not move all that well, particularly in a pick and roll situation, which that's usually the case. When you're a heavy-footed big, you're not going to be able to catch up. You're going to have a lot slower of a reaction time. And the problem with his game, it's not that it's a bad thing to be an offensive hub at all, but he certainly wasn't good enough to warrant the high usage that he had over at his time at Kentucky. And it's just not necessarily scalable at this moment in time. What does a role for him ultimately look like if he is unable to handle the ball as much as he did over at Kentucky? That's what I am curious about. I didn't really have, let's see, I had an Aaron Baines comparison, a Yusuf Nurkic comparison. You are ultimately going to have like him as an offensive hub in spurts, but you really don't want to play him all that too much right now. About 10, 15 minutes per game if you're really getting risky with him. And you have him be more of a dump-off man at the rim as well. And in Boston's case, you're probably going to lose both of your bigs in Kristaps Porzingis in the trade to Atlanta. You're probably going to lose Al Horford as well, which is an unfortunate thing. So what is their center? And Luke Cornett. Luke Cornett's a free agent as well. So what their center rotation looks like going into next season, it's still going to be to be determined. I don't think that he's necessarily going to be the starter at all this upcoming season, but I would not be surprised if Williams goes ahead and begins playing a very sizable role upon arriving in Boston. They are just not stopping with these picks. Milwaukee's already up. Bogoljub Markovic. This was another one of the guys that was just a very quick hitter for me. I'll go ahead and find him right here. He's interesting. He's a stretch four. He's 6'11", has some awesome shooting mechanics, very fluid, very quick jump shot. I think that he's got a good feel for utilizing pump fakes because he is a shooting threat. He utilizes pump fakes a lot, and that allows for give and go situations that he has really excelled at. It certainly shows up in his cutting as well. And again, with every other player that comes from Europe, really damn good passer as well. I think that he's able to see a lot of windows when he is in the mid posts that allows for him to be a lot more versatile offensively speaking. Now, when we're talking about his post game, he's mainly in the post to play make for others. He's not really scoring there. He doesn't have a whole lot of strength and physicality to his name. There were spurts of him showing a decent drop step and finish comfortably with both hands. I did like that about his game. He was able to finish with both hands and be a decent finisher at the rim, which if you're looking at these 6'11" guys that really don't project themselves as a center, that's a valuable asset to have. And he just also plays with a ton of confidence. Even if I don't think the percentages, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think that the percentages were great. And I'll double check that real quickly. Markovic. No, 39% on about 5 attempts. Really damn good. And a decent free throw percentage as well at about 77. He's a front court scorer. He's very much built for the modern day game. Oh my gosh, Memphis is already up. Granted, like he does have defensive issues, moving his feet and whatnot, and you'd prefer him to just catch and shoot at this moment in time instead of just being an off-ball shooter. Javon Small to Memphis, that's fun. Like he should slot in as a very solid stretch four early on, and he'll allow teams to play 5 out. And we're talking about his fit over at Milwaukee, where you're looking at the impending departures of Brook Lopez and potentially Bobby Portis. There's a legitimate need for floor spacing next to Giannis, and I think that he can be a very good floor spacer over in Milwaukee. Now, Javon Small was quite literally the last player that I had on my list in this quick hitter stuff. So we are going to look him up again right here. Javon Small. Where's Javon at? If I were to just take a look, because there really isn't a whole lot of information on him. That's the weird aspect of it. Man, I am struggling to find Javon Small anywhere. Sorry, bear with me. Might just be skipping over him. Javon Small. So again, his usage went up every single year from about 17% to 29%. A 57 true shooting percentage. That's around average. %62 at the rim, 34% at the mid-range, 35% from three. Does that say 12? All right, give me 1 second. It's Javon Small, because that's per 100 possessions. 19 points, 4 boards, 6 assists on shooting splits of 42, 35, 88. And those attempts are at around 7 a game, so a high volume shooter, and that's average. That is average. That is average 3-point shooting for his sake. It is fascinating to see them go another short guard, though, if we're talking about Memphis. Because if I'm looking at this and I'm trying to find snippets of like readings and whatnot, 1.2 steals, 0.4 blocks. Obviously, for somebody that's 6'1", he's a 6'1" guard, 6'5" wingspan, 190 pounds, very light. I mean, I can already imagine like the frame being something that gets targeted so easily. And I think that you already have that in a guy in Scottie Pippen Jr. I think that I would have just rather rolled with Scottie Pippen Jr. And again, my guy Tyrese Proctor is still there. I wouldn't say it's that questionable of a fit. No, it is. You have so many guards on this roster. Cole Anthony, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Ja, Luke Kennard, John Conchar, among other names, Scottie Pippen Jr. I certainly would have went after a wing. And this isn't it. This isn't it at all. I'm sure that there's going to be some good stuff, and I'll be sure to actually find a couple of clips of him after the final pick at pick 59. But they did not need another guard. Not at all. Oh, and the Cavs take Tyrese Proctor. Oh my God. That's an excellent pick. Fuck. Damn, that's a good pick. I'll get to your question real soon here, Carson. But I'm jealous of Cleveland making that pick. My favorite second round prospect, again, reminded me a ton of a Derek White and Andrew Nembhard. A hell of a shooter, very efficient shooter, and a very efficient scorer around the perimeter. Was very solid from three at 41%, 43% on spot up threes, 47 on pull up, 53% in the mid range. This is a guy that doesn't get to the rim all that much. Again, I'm trying to be brief here because I've raved about him majority of this draft cycle. But his value lies a lot in being a plug and play 3-and-D wing / guard combo. And I think that he has shown a little bit of creation in the pick and roll and being creative in that aspect from a playmaking perspective, from a scoring perspective. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Ty Jerome stuff. He was not good at all when we're talking about the playoffs. He had the one good game where he had, 30 points off of the bench? But that was really the only game. And they have this need for some legitimate defense from the guard spot. Mitchell is a good hustle guy, defensively speaking. And then among guards, like, you're not getting anything from Ty Jerome. You're absolutely not getting anything from Darius Garland. And you're definitely not getting anything from Sam Merrill either. And Proctor is a very legitimate defender. Again, he does have to fill into his frame a little bit more, but his shooting and his overall scoring ability is super enticing. When I take a look at somebody that can shoot on and off the ball, be able to create on and off the ball, that's going to be nice. Again, he's got to develop a shot at the rim where, again, only 50% of his layups, not all that good. He's got to be a little bit more versatile in his scoring palette and really put pressure on the defense, because otherwise defenses are going to allow for him to get to the rim. But he is a damn good fit over in Cleveland. I would definitely consider bringing him in and being a 15-minute per game, 20-minute per game guard off of the bench. This is an excellent pick. He was my number 31 prospect in this draft class, and I'm super stoked. I'm very, very stoked about this fit. But to get to Carson's question, what are the Bucks going to do at center since Brook is likely on the way out? I don't know, man. I hate to put it in those terms, but you have almost no way of improving this roster. You have Damian Lillard's contract that right now is not all that movable because he has his torn Achilles. Your best bet is Bobby Portis being re-signed, which he certainly can. But everything that I've seen has been very conflicting in terms of whether they want to or not. If you want to take a look at like free agent centers, man, I'm going to take a look at free agents 2025. But regardless, you're stuck in the second apron. You're only able to offer minimum contracts to anybody. And let's be honest, Pat Connaughton is not much of an asset at this stage of his career. Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be a free agent, and that was a decent asset to have. I'm not a believer in Jericho Sims all that much. I don't think anybody should be that much of a believer in Jericho Sims. He's a really good athlete. He has legitimate vertical pop. Dude, I think the funniest outcome would be to go ahead and have Giannis play the center. That would be the funniest option. But you're definitely looking at the minimum contract route, and that's a very difficult thing when you're talking about a team in the second apron. So New York is in. Kobe Sanders. Please tell me, how many more players do I have in my quick write-ups? There's a couple, but Kobe Sanders was not one of them. So let's check them out real quick. Kobe, where are you at, Sanders? %48% in the mid-range is really nice. I look at mid-range jumpers, and I think that they're the most pure shot in basketball. So 48% is a damn good number. What is... Okay. Okay, so Kobe Sanders is now a Clipper. So he took a scoring dip this year from 20 to 16. but he became a little bit more efficient just being off the just having a scoring dip meant that he was being more efficient, about 46% from the field, 34% from three. 6'7", about 6'8" wingspan. He mainly played on the ball, and he showed a lot of passing, which is what they were saying on the broadcast that I was able to hear as well. About 4.5 assists, 1.8 turnovers. That's really promising. Supposedly looks for rollers and a lot of cutters. He can manipulate defenders with his eyes. It's a player that doesn't get to the paint. That's an issue. Let me see in his percentages. Around 58% at the rim. It's not bad. But if we're looking... Okay. So it was a quick trade up from 50 to 51 for the Clippers. So now this Knicks pick is going to be coming up. But by all accounts, this is a guy that's a little bit more on the ball, somebody that doesn't really have much athleticism at this stage of his development. Everything is more so at his own pace, a little bit more slow. Not much of a separator. So he looks like he could definitely be, what's his height? He's a wing. He's 6'7". I almost said freaking TJ McConnell. The way that this write-up is making it seem like, he's by all accounts, he's a big wing who can dribble, pass, shoot, defend. But there's nothing particularly elite in those areas that make him more desirable than being the 50th pick in the draft. And if we're talking about a fit for the Clippers, I mean, who else is available on my board really quickly? Okay. All right, that's fine. Because there really isn't a whole lot of great athletes over throughout the rest of this draft period, or at least athletes that really stuck out to me. And I think them bringing in somebody that has that all-around ability with height as well, for the Clippers in particular, it certainly matches an MO when you have James Harden, who's 6'5", 6'6", and is their point guard. When you have Bogdanovich, who can legitimately play make as well. I would certainly prefer it in the form of a point guard, which is why Ryan Nembhard would have been very fun with this Clippers team. It seems like they're going to have to go ahead and hone in on one particular skill to go ahead and make him a little bit more versatile for this Clippers team. Mohamed Dawaria. Okay. I was not aware of this dude at all. Let me find Muhammad for you. You'd think, I'm not going to make that joke. Never mind. All right, so I'm going to have to find him somewhere because they immediately went to commercial, didn't give any analysis at all. So it makes it seem like this is a draft and stash, if anything else. Diawara. Jeez, there is almost nothing on him. So 6'8", good positional size. So he has good athleticism by everything that we're seeing. Good handle, good ball skills. 7'2" wingspan. That should be pretty good. Oof, that's not good. 49% in the restricted area is not good for somebody of his size. Not anybody that you can rely on in the mid-range. Good corner three-point shooter, 67% in the left, 42 on the right. So it seems like a lot of this is more so being a playmaker. Yeah, he only shot 32% on 2 attempts per game. That's not all that great. Supposedly good footwork, a lot of solid cutting, being a pick and roll option as a 6'8" ball handler. Can slide his feet really well, but he can give up vulnerable angles on pick and rolls. So that it just looks like a player that has a lot of positional versatility from a defensive perspective, decent playmaking, and this was all in a low usage role over with his youth teams overseas. This was an overseas prospect. And him having a low usage role and displaying as much as he did from a playmaking and ball handling perspective, that does give me a decent amount of hope in that on a team that already has so many ball handlers, whether that be with Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, there's already a lot of decent ball handlers, as well as Deuce McBride. And you're probably going to have somebody in the likes of a Tyler Kolek coming in and cementing himself in the rotation next season. I think him being able to do so in spurts and be able to levy some pressure off of those ball handlers and just be this playmaker, it's a pretty damn solid archetype offensively. From a defensive perspective, it does sound like he is a wanted archetype. You certainly want him to throw up more shots than he has over the last several months. Only 2 attempts per game is very low volume, which is not really all that passable when you're looking at modern day wings that don't provide much of an offensive palette anyways, aside from passing. I view this as a development piece. That's for sure. Gosh dang it, another pick. Okay, so Golden State selects Alex Tui from Australia. All right. Interesting player as well. Again, not the best physically gifted athlete ever, 6'7", 6'7" wingspan. But weirdly enough, he's a very damn solid defender. It's more so in the team defense setting. He rotates really solidly. He's very good with recovery and being able to get back to his man. He is a gambler, which is sort of the risk in terms of his overall play on the court. He does gamble a lot when there's a pass coming to him. He definitely does go for the steal often. And that's something that has to remain disciplined as his time in the league, as he matures. He runs the floor well. He definitely leaks out on the break. He certainly leads the break as well. Somebody that really does know how to finish at the rim very solidly. He has a good feel of the game, and I know that's as cliche of a line as it gets, a good feel of the game, but he really knows how to keep the ball moving. He doesn't really have the ball stick to his hands all that much, and he takes the most efficient shots that are available to him. And for a team in Golden State that really emphasizes efficiency and utilizing all of your movements and your skills to the fullest advantage, that certainly makes sense as a fit here for Golden State. Let's see. I'm trying to find percentages on him. I didn't write down any percentages when I was doing that quick breakdown. Doesn't even have shooting. Okay, 34% from 3, 6 attempts per game. That's not bad. But you are certainly looking at somebody who is limited in his scoring versatility. He's very much a guy that only cuts and drives to the rim. Doesn't really change direction all that well either, which is a concern on my part. It's just more so he does a lot of good stuff for the team more so than for himself. He's a very, very low ceiling role player. I view him a lot more as a development guy. He's going to need some time to develop some skill offensively to crack rotations. There's not one particular offensive skill that he's amazing at. He's just fine at everything else. Just needs to develop a go-to skill first. View him a little bit more in the Danilo Gallinari, Georges Niang range, where they're thicker wings that can move fine in spurts, but just really has to find something that will allow for him to be passable offensively. And that should work in a Golden State team that really does value versatility from everybody on the roster. It's also a reason why we saw a guy in Jonathan Kuminga not have as many minutes in the playoffs. There really isn't, the ball sticks in his hands a lot. And being able to bring in somebody like Tui, who is a very low maintenance and really knows how to keep the ball moving, give it back to the stars, bring it back to the actual scorers on the team. I think that makes sense. And from a team defensive perspective, he should be able to hide pretty well in terms of his individual defense. He can certainly make plays off of the ball that makes the fit there decent if he were to get playing time there. Okay, so another pick happened. Good Lord. John Tonji. Okay. Okay, just to be sure, where is he headed? John, I hope that Utah pick is accurate. Okay, so he is a part of Utah right now. Yeah, just had to be sure about it. But Tanji was also a guy that was on my radar that I wasn't able to get to during the later parts of this process. But a 6'4" guard, incremental improvements over his time in college, went from 4 points to 7 points to 9 to 15 to 20 points this past year at his time at Wisconsin. 6'9" wingspan is a very solid wingspan. Very efficient from what I'm able to see at 47, 39, 91 shooting splits. The 1.8 assists to the 1.8 turnovers certainly catches my eye in terms of his ball security and whether or not he can actually be a connective piece. So he has a good motor by everything that I'm seeing. He was able to angle the driver into areas where he knew that he had help, so he utilizes his teammates to his advantage from a team defensive perspective. Good driver in college. Has good pump fakes, good hezzies. Was shooting off of movement as well. I mean, he 12 of 26 from 3 on dribble handoffs and off screens. 42% of his catch and shoot threes this year is really good. I like that. So a lot of it comes back to his size. He doesn't really have playmaking chops whatsoever as a 6'4" wing / guard. Not particularly athletic. You love his physicality, but can be overmatched in spurts. Not a defensive playmaker at all. Just faces a lot of questions in terms of rotations and getting out to shooters and closing out. So in terms of that skill set fitting over at Utah, I fear that you already have somebody of that mold in a Johnny Juzang, who I think is a much better playmaker in that aspect as well. Let's see. I mean, I can't say that there's too many players that I would have taken over here. He was certainly on my list of players that I wanted to watch. But I also remember seeing a whole lot in terms of a lot of frustrated fans. It does seem like this was a player who held his team back a little bit in the form of his in terms of his decision making and his shot selection. It does seem like that was something that frustrated a lot of fans and perhaps held them back to something a little bit better in terms of the team's overall ceiling. And I don't think that's going to happen over here in Utah. I think that he's going to be much more low usage. I think if you had him be a little bit more of the shooting mold and had him be more of a catch and shoot guy, I think that's where you would see him make a name for himself for Utah if he were to break the rotation. But again, there's just a lot of guard/wings that are ahead of him in the rotation, which makes it likely that he's probably going to be on a two-way contract and play a lot of G League minutes and refine his game there. I did see another pick go through. Sorry, I saw it come up on the screen and gosh dang it. Okay, well they're already at pick 55. I completely missed pick 54. And they're not giving me anything to help me out with this. Not even ESPN has got me. If anybody has his 55th pick, please let me know. I'm trying to find this player. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I guess just nobody has his 54th pick, I guess. Talon Peter. I have no clue who that is. Talon Peter. And then the Lakers had already picked too. Lachlan Olbrich. Okay. That's the player that I know. I'll go to Lachlan first. And that's going to Chicago. Yes, that's going to Chicago. If I could find him, good Lord. Like, that was a guy that was on my radar. Lock. So Lachlan, there we go. 8 points per game, 4 boards, measured in at about 6'9", 230 pounds. By all accounts, very coordinated, very good hands, a very solid rebounder as well. I wonder if that's, oh my God, this site doesn't even have the stats for him. Oh my goodness. But by all accounts, it does seem like he's just a really damn solid athlete. Mainly a below-the-rim finisher, good touch. Yeah, 69% of his attempts at the basket and in the half court. That's real good. That's a very strong mark. And he has good passing ability. I mean, who would have thought, right? If you're looking at all of these overseas guys, all of them are decent passers. So he does seem to have like a little bit of a problem in terms of being undersized. Because by all accounts, it does seem like he doesn't have any explosiveness. It definitely seems like he gets hindered pretty easily from a physicality standpoint. He doesn't really scramble well on defense, and that shows up in terms of the lack of athleticism that he has. He's not quite, yeah. It does seem like he's just not big enough to be a center, but not quick enough to be a wing at all. And he has some of the interesting tools in terms of being a passer and um, being somebody that can really connect with the team well and do some of the other little stuff well and finish at the rim. But if he's unable to space the floor as a wing, that certainly leaves his role in question. As far as fit with the Lakers, you're definitely not going to see him play too many minutes. Probably a lot of garbage time, probably a lot of G League time for him, because everything that I'm seeing is that he's a very raw prospect that needs to hone in on a particular position, because he's left without a position, all while he's left without a position right now with his physical traits and his athletic traits, all while having to play as a center, and that's strange. He does have a strange role and a strange skill set, but it's certainly a fun one. He can certainly be a hub if need be. He's just got to hone in on an outside shot. In at least from everything that I'm reading, I think the best case scenario would be for him to develop an outside shot to allow for him to be passable, offensively speaking, to allow for his playmaking chops to be further utilized in a more creative way. It allows them for more spacing, and it allows for him to have a lot more potential for playing time in a legitimate basketball rotation. But yeah, I won't lie to you. I have not heard of this Talon Peter folk. I gotta find him. Supposedly he's gonna go to Indiana. Any write up anywhere. Wow, there's close to nothing on him. And if I'm looking at big boards, yeah, I can't even find him on a big board. Man, that is so strange to find somebody that has virtually nothing here that I can rely on in terms of reading. I guess I'm just gonna have to figure him out at some point, but it's not gonna be right now. Memphis's pick is up. Pick is in at 56. Okay, so folks are talking about the Pacers re-signing Miles Turner. That makes sense. I am so curious about the Pacers' direction right now, because it is another guard that they selected. I'm not expecting them to play one bit. I like Talon Parker is supposedly a guard, and I'm just not expecting him to play one bit. Definitely, probably going to be a G League guy with the stuff that I end up researching on him. But with Halliburton's injury and them preparing to enter the luxury tax and lock themselves, okay, so the Warriors are actually going to be picking here instead of Memphis. But as I was saying with Indiana, they're about to hard cap themselves by re-signing Miles Turner to a large extension, which to that I say rightfully so. I think this is a really damn good core to build around. Halliburton being hurt and being out for all of next year really makes me question what is the viability of this team next year. Are they going to focus on the development of a Nemhard as a potential scorer? Who's going to be your number who's going to be your 1B? Pascal's going to be your 1A. Are you going to have Ben Mathurin go ahead and do so? Is this the year that we see a little bit more Jarris Walker minutes? They're just in a very weird and unfortunate spot. That came at, as everybody knows, perhaps the worst possible time. I wouldn't be surprised if they look at the veteran point guard option, route either. But I think that this is Nembhard's point guard position to lose until further notice. Will Richard to Golden State. I was aware of him. I was aware of Will Richard. He was the backcourt partner for Walter Clayton. Gosh dang it, come on. So again, this was not a guy that I had written up on. Will Richard. Oh my gosh. All right, then I'm going to have to go find him somewhere. 13 points, 49, 36, 84 shooting splits, about 5 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals. It's a decent line. It's a very decent line. By all accounts, looks to be just a solid defender, good open court athlete. Okay, by all accounts, does seem like a low usage guard, which is nice. Like, he is a sharp shooter, or at least a solid shooter off of the dribble, off of motion, coming off of screens. He does seem solid in that department. Does seem like a decent playmaker. In terms of like the efficiency in which he's able to do so, not very much of a high turnover guy. So he played a little bit more off the bounce in college, but certainly seems to be more of a catch and shoot guy. And that totally checks out for players at around this range. And this is going to Golden State as well. And I think that makes a whole lot of sense for Golden State. When you're looking at Golden State and their ability to put guys in motion, I think that a lot of these guards are able to take advantage of those opportunities because, again, a lot of the attraction is going to be going to Steph. And now you have a team with Butler and Draymond Green, 2 guys that just aren't floor spacers at all. And you're likely going to have a center who is not a floor spacer, whether that be Max Shulga. That's a solid one. And that's going to Boston. That's nice. I'll get to him in a minute. But the lack of floor spacing that this team has, it is evident. There is like 4 or 5 players here that are not all that good of floor spacers and stretching the floor out. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that they don't have the pieces necessary to, get off of Steph for a little bit. But when you have that very many non-shooters next to you in the form of those 2, your centers, aside from Quentin Post, Jonathan Kuminga especially, there's certainly some other options. And by all accounts, it does seem like he has some defensive chops as well. So I think that this is a decent development guy that you can have waiting in the wickets for a little bit. And just from a shooting perspective, you know that organization loves shooting. So you got to take that really nicely. Max Shulga. That's definitely solid. So from VCU, he's an old head at 23 years old. His birthday was actually yesterday. 6'4", 206 pounds. averaged 15, 6, and 4 on 44, 39, 78 splits. Okay, by all accounts, this is going to be an off-ball roll. He shot 40% from 3 on nearly, 400 attempts. Damn near 400 attempts. 43% off of the catch. Hit half of his off-screen three-point attempts. 35 of his handoff attempts. 41 in spot-ups. And 42% off of the catch last season. That's yeah, that certainly fits the bill if you're talking about a Boston team that is going to continue to emphasize players who absolutely gun the ball, that really go ahead and shoot the damn ball. Certainly puts in question the immediate future of a player like Sam Hauser, who who's a player that I think that Boston is trying to move off of and try to get even lower in terms of the taxes that they're going to have. Tax apron and whatnot. See, he drew a good amount of fouls, 5.4 throws. Court defensively, which sort of makes the shooting all that more impressive and probably the most, yes, it's probably the most translatable skill if you're talking about just for any shooting is going to be that way. But when you're talking about somebody that can pick up 94 court and still have the energy to really put up as many shots as he did, I mean, 400 3-point attempts through 2 seasons at college, it is a large number, and I do credit him for that. And to still be able to do so in an efficient manner while picking up full court is something that I think, like, I commend him for that. That's very legitimate stamina and energy, and something that I think can play a part in him getting a decent amount of minutes early on. Not that big of an athlete. He's decent at everything else offensively, it seems like, in terms of being a driver, setting screens, and being a passer. Nothing really all that great aside from his shooting, which, again, like we talked about with some of these other prospects, some of these guys are very solid at everything offensively, and then they don't have that one defining skill. And at least with Shulga, he has that legitimate shooting skill that Boston can go plug in right away. I think that's a fun aspect of it. Yeah, it looks like he's just going to be in the Sam Hauser role. He's going to be coming off of screens and doing a lot of off-ball movement, and there is no issue with that. This is a team that has fallen in love with that shot. They live or die by that shot. I don't think that there's much more that needs to be said about that. That's just a really damn solid fit for Shulga in particular. Saliu Niang to Cleveland. That's fascinating. Led his team in rebounds per game last year. That's fun. And he's a young guy. I'm trying to find his profile. I'm not. This is a man that I'm also just completely unfamiliar with. But hey, all this does, I'm unable to find them at this moment in time. But all this does is give me a good enough time to go ahead and actually come back, look at some more film, and go ahead and look at some players that I wasn't really all that familiar with, and Niang is certainly in that mold. Wouldn't be surprised if this is another No, this probably isn't a draft and stash player. I mean, he's at the draft right now. He's getting interviewed right now. Yeah, even folks posting a couple of hours ago talking about how he's so under-discussed. There's only one scouting report available. So pick and roll defense seems like a strength. Closing out and rotating it, so it definitely seems like a defensive piece on the wing. 50% in the restricted area as a shooter. Not much of a floor spacer, not one bit. I mean, 10% in one corner, 29% in the other, and 31% everywhere else. That's not good. It does seem like this is going to be a player that runs on motor, that runs on putbacks, getting a bunch of boards and rebounds, being technically refined as a defensive player, just by the stuff that I'm reading, of course. This is the only scouting report that's available to me right now. But by all accounts, it does seem like this should be a draft and stash type of player. I don't think that I would not be surprised if that ends up being the case where he gets a little bit more playing time overseas, refines his game professionally. And now we're at the last pick of the draft, and this is going to Memphis. They're going to congratulate everybody. Hell yeah. It's fascinating. I knew of like damn near everybody that was I knew of everybody that was picked last year, knew of them, and then there were some folks that just weren't available to me. There was two folks that were available to me. And this is another guy that I'm unfamiliar with, Janai Broome. I'm actually going to take time to look him up again. Janai. Okay, so by all accounts, he's a hustle guy. Being a great defensive prospect. Okay, so Sam Vecini was really high on him. Not a scorer one bit. Okay, so I can just get that out of the way. I don't think that he's going to be anything close to a scorer. But a very relentless player. He called him the best defensive player in college. God, I wish there was some stats on like synergy or something like that. That would allow for me to see. Okay, yeah, 34% on synergy. That's great. Shot 34% on opponents shot 34% when guarded by him in particular. Opponents turned the ball over 3 more times per 100 possessions when he was on the court. About 2 steals a game, half a shot a game. He blocked about half a shot a game, which is pretty damn good for somebody that is 6'4", a defensive playmaker. And again, he just does seem like a defensive player in totality. Not a whole lot of efficiency really anywhere. Not comfortable with a lot of things offensively speaking. If he can develop anything reasonable from an offensive perspective, it does seem like that would be very nice. That would be very nice for him to develop something offensively, because right now there's a lot of fun stuff regarding his defense that's, yeah, defensively speaking, he's going to be a fun player. You definitely want him out there. And again, over in Memphis again. Ugh. It is such a shame with Memphis getting all these damn guards. There has to be something lined up, whether that's for like a wing, whether that be for a center, with Zach Edey being out for as long as he will be. They need some size. They have all of the guards out there now. But that is the end of this draft period. If you guys have any questions, shoot me some questions, NBA draft wise, NBA team wise. I'll probably be on for maybe another 10 minutes at best, hopefully. But I guess the easiest place to start is to think about immediate winners and losers. I immediately think of my team, and I hope Stewart is still here. I really hope Stewart is still here because I think that he does want to hear thoughts on this. Eric Dixon being undrafted is fascinating, and he goes to the Lakers. I like that. CJ Huntley is going to be on a two-way contract with Phoenix. That's good on Phoenix being able to do that. Okay, supposedly a lot of folks really like CJ Huntley. But immediately, like, I think of Phoenix as a winner. There's still a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up there. They still have maybe 7 shooting guards on the roster. But I think the selection, particularly of Kobe Brea, it is going to push a Grayson Allen out of here. It does seem like Cody Martin is gone. They seem open to moving a Nick Richards, a Royce O'Neal. They are very much open to everybody. And of course, Bradley Beal is going to be on the move at some point, or hopefully, unless he decides to hold himself hostage and not get any minutes here. But I think that there is something to be said about staying true to your word that allows me to build trust with this front office from a fan perspective. Them going ahead and saying that they want more size and more athleticism. They want to get better on defense. That they might potentially look at lineups that feature 2 bigs and be a little bit more modern. I think that they've certainly reached that level. They've brought in a ton of athleticism in the last several days. They brought in size and length over the last several days. And I think that they brought in a really nice player in Brea as well. That is just one of your ancillary shooting pieces now that is going to be such a luxury for this team to have. And it makes a lot of other guys expendable. It allows for more trade opportunities. I think that's a very fun thing for Phoenix to think about. They have a fun big man pairing right now with Mark Williams and Kamen Maluach that we're still going to have. I think that it's going to take a couple of years to sort of make sense of that pairing right now, because we do have to wait on a potential shooting development by Maluach, assumedly. But they stole value with him, with Rasheed Fleming. I think Kobe Brea is an excellent selection as well. Aside from the fact that, I would have taken Tyrese Proctor. But I think that is besides the point. I think Phoenix did a really good job working with the assets that they did, being able to maneuver some money, bring in young talent in the way that they did. And there's just a little bit more promise in the way that they're building this team, a little bit more aligned, you could say. As far as other winners, like I do think of Utah in the first round still, like I was saying earlier in this stream. I think Cleveland using their first pick on Tyrese Proctor, I think that's going to be a hell of a steal. I'm almost ready to call my shot with that and say that he is going to be the Derek White of this draft class, but we need some time. We need some time to do so. You can't be fully confident in somebody succeeding. I mean, you really never know with a lot of these players in terms of development track, in terms of the situations that they're going to. Which is why, like a Chaz Lanier, like going to Detroit, assuming that stuff doesn't work out for Malik Beasley and them in contract negotiations, that's a really damn good pick. But it might stunt Lanier from making a legitimate push into the actual rotation. Assuming that it's like a multi-year contract extension, which I am expecting him to get. Let's see. I do like Charlotte's draft. I wouldn't say biggest winners at all or anything of that nature, but I think Kalkbrenner is a really damn solid fit here, slotting in as the projected starting center here for Charlotte after the Mark Williams deal. When they originally made the Mark Williams trade to the Lakers and they brought in Dalton Connect, I was able to immediately pinpoint, the thought process of that trade in particular and what they ended up doing in this draft, particularly with selecting Con Knipple and Liam McNeely as ancillary shooting pieces next to LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. I like the idea of that. I like the idea of potentially moving off of Miles Bridges. I think that Kalkbrenner is a very damn good center prospect that I think deserved a little bit more late first round buzz than he ended up getting. So I think with everything that they were giving up, I think that they've done a really solid job with bringing in more ancillary pieces to build around a duo of LaMelo and Brandon Miller. I talked about New Orleans being a loser, and I still think that is the case. Yeah, they didn't have a pick in this. Or did they? Micah Peavey. That's right. It's a decent pick, but I don't think that it just changes the fact that you can't give up first rounders the way that they did during this go around. Adou Thiero is a damn good selection for the Lakers. Again, I'm just looking at second round, but full on hauls. I talked about the Spurs. I think the Thunder getting an additional first round pick is hilarious, but very fun. I think Thomas Sorber is going to be a really good fit over in OKC, a lot more size, which was something that I was concerned about with them when they didn't make a single trade to go get a backup big, which was confusing for me because I do think that with the durability concerns that come with a Chet Holmgren, and I just don't think that Jalen Williams is much of all that good of a center, really all that much at all. I think that he's fine, but he's not the playable big that you really need. I certainly think about Sorber, and I think, man, that really adds to the length of this team that has made them perhaps the best defense of all time. I'm willing to go as far as to say that. I think the Heat are winners, being able to steal Yakachonis at pick 20. I think that's a very legitimate selection. And very weirdly reminds me of a Goran Dragic, where they're able to change pace really well, that they're able to get to the paint well and create opportunities on that front. He does have to hone in on the turnover issues that he has, but I do think that he's going to be just fine over in a situation where he's going to have a lot more scoring options and a lot more mature options, whether that be in Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins to some extent. I'm not sure if Wiggins will stay, but there's options here ahead of him that he's going to be tasked with setting up, and I think that's really damn good for the potential playmaking developments that he can make. I think Orlando's a winner, man. Jace Richardson at pick 25 was always a pick that I had sort of penciled in as a fit after they traded away Cole Anthony to go get Desmond Bane. And that really is an incredible fit when you take a look at the shooting and the off the dribble ability that he has. It's pretty much a Cole Anthony light. I don't think you're losing anything by getting rid of him. You trade up later on and you go get yourself a Noah Penda and allows yourself to be a little bit more positionally versatile within your defense. Given that you don't trust the Jonathan Isaac situation regarding his health or anything of that nature, I think that's just a really damn good selection there. They got a really good haul, and that's on top of getting Desmond Bane and still having a bunch of picks left over to go ahead and make other potential moves if need be. Okay, so Book wanted a desire. He had a desire for a lob threat big man. I like a lot. I've been needing that. I mean, they should have been asking that for a long time now. Let's be honest here. All right, let's look at some of these other picks that I like. I think the Sixers are definitely winners. I like Janai Broome and his fit over in Philly. I was talking with my Philly friend Will about players that we wanted in the second round, and that was a player that he had brought up as somebody of interest to him, and I think that's a really damn good haul. You get yourself one of the, I think it was the SEC Player of the Year. I'm trying to remember where Auburn is from. I really don't have the college stuff down at all. I hope that's the right conference. I'm not going to go ahead and find that. But I think getting yourself a very legitimate backup big that can, he definitely reminds me of the Yabusele role that he possessed just this past season. And with him being a free agent, this is a very easy slot into that role. And then obviously VJ Edgecombe, I think, is going to turn out to be a really good piece. I'm almost ready to call my shot with him as well. But again, you can't ever be so sure. Losers of this draft, or at least a little bit more. Oh my God, I forgot that Ulbrich was actually going to Chicago. Gosh dang it. And that's fine. I like Lachlan Ulbrich to Chicago. Because I was talking about him in the form of him being a Laker, and that's always confusing. But Chicago, I liked Carter Bryant a lot more than Noah Sengay. I think that Sengay is a very decent prospect, with at least in the form of what his actual production was. I think that there is a lot for him to work on. He reminds me a lot of Bilal Coulibaly in terms of his frame and the stuff that he was able to show off when they played overseas. But I think Asenge is somebody that is a lot lighter. I think he has a lot more lapses defensively. He's a decent option. Like, do not get me wrong. There is definitely a higher ceiling that comes with him potentially being a very legitimate 3-and-D wing. I think that there were better options on the board, in my opinion. Carter Bryant was right there. He was my number 8 prospect. I mean, I would have probably looked at a Nick Clifford if I was them. A little bit of a stretch because Nick Clifford is more ready instead of more of a development guy. Even a Derek Queen, given how much that they have been trying to move off of Vucevic. Perhaps looking at a younger center would bode well for them. I wouldn't describe them as total losers, but they are definitely. I do think that it was a little bit of a reach, given what was available to them. And Portland they really have to nail this Hansen Young pick. That's a very difficult selection to get behind, even when there's 3 or 4 centers that I definitely would have had ahead of him in this draft class in particular. But those are just immediate reactions. I think I'm gonna have a little bit more time to watch a little bit more of these prospects, come up with a better grade, and come up with better grades for all of these teams and have it all sink in a little bit more. I'm sure that it'll settle in more, especially as free agency comes around. There's certainly a lot more moves left to be made for every team in the NBA. But regardless, this was another fun draft, guys. I seriously appreciate you guys. Again, I said it yesterday as we were closing out last night, but I enjoy doing this every single year. I enjoy having the guests that I have on every single year and being able to present everything that I'm able to, all the information that I've been able to research, being able to present it to you guys. And the fact of the matter is that I still see a decent, like a handful of people in this stream still 3 hours in on day 2. And I seriously appreciate you guys for trusting me with your draft content and consuming my draft content, given all of the platforms that you have to go ahead and consume this stuff. So seriously, thank you guys so much. I look forward to doing this every year. I hope that I'm really hoping to get to Summer League this year and pump out some stories, but that's still in the works, and hopefully everything works out well in the end over there. But thank you guys again for an amazing draft season this season, and I look forward to talking more ball with you guys on Three-Peat Sports soon. You guys stay safe.